especially a 4-hour detail.
Understood. I
We
think with the union, we'd just have to figure out the budget for that.
I think if it's part of our assignment, if the new fiscal year for the police department assignment is a part of their duties we assign to the chief, that they just have to figure out how to do it. And if that, you know, if they want to give it as a overtime assignment for somebody for an hour, or move a duty officer there for the hour, that's fine. Or if they want to bring in an auxiliary, I would think we should be able to put that into the assignment in his, just to fit within his budget, he can figure it out. And if that means the town picks up a, you know, a $27 charge for the hour on 6 random days, then we're putting $120 into that on behalf of the people of the town that it benefits, rather than this group having to fundraise and come up with $200 or $300 per event is thousands of dollars for this.
I'm more than willing to try to get into a discussion like that and try to work, like you're saying, and try to see if we could do that.
That being said, I make a motion we accept their proposal to use a Southbury Common as is listed.
And you, Charlie?
I don't know. I think I might agree with Greg on this.
But even if we let them use the South Common, they can always come back and request to use the North Common later if we work this out for them. So this doesn't doesn't mean that they don't have to go there. It just, I want them to understand that
Right.
that's been my intent from last year, to try to work around this for them. And, you know, probably my fault for not reaching out to them sooner with this idea, but we've had a lot going on, and me especially, so. I hope they would want to come back up the Common. It's nice on Sunday evenings. I live uptown. I can hear it from my house, and it draws a good crowd. It's a good thing.
Okay. All right, any further discussion? Call for a vote.
Aye.
All right.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Oh, I thought he did.
I did, but I will.
I apologize. Thank you, Charlie. I misheard or misunderstood the intent. So we just need to follow up with the police chief on this, and then we can follow up with Club and Community Band if we can get an
Right,
internal
so-
agreement on how to handle this.
And that might mean, we're talking about next fiscal year, so it wouldn't be till July 1st that we'd be able to make this an assignment. So if they plan on some later concerts up here after July 1st, we could certainly make sure they're accommodated with police coverage through the budget. And Claire glaring at me. It's only like a couple $100 in the budget total, as opposed to 200 plus per event for them to come up with for a detail. But that might bring them back up here in the latter half, at least in the second and third months of the season.
Exactly. See what we can do. Or even if we can just get a couple.
Yeah.
You know, if we can't do the rest of the second half of the
There's
season,
no
maybe
doubt
we
we
can
want
get
an
2 or
officer up
3 and
there.
we can.
It's busy, it's crowded, and there's a lot of kids, and we need the officer up there, but there's, you know, it's one of those things I hate to
Find a way to work.
have to make the group. Same the reason I don't like to charge some of the groups for the town hall, depending what the meetings are for when they're renting the space down there. It's with the benefit of the public.
So, new item, we have a wage authorization. We have an existing employee, Kyle Gold, full-time firefighter, EMT, step 3. Makes $18.32 an hour. He is accepted a full-time position with another town. So, he is requesting, or I should say the fire chief is requesting that he be identified as an on-call firefighter EMT now, so he's still available to be on the books, but he's no longer a full-time employee.
So his hourly rate's not gonna change his part-time, I didn't realize that. That's not bad.
Is that the classification plan?
Right.
So it doesn't matter if you're on call or not, you get the same rate?
That's the rate for firefighter
Guess
EMT.
what you're-
Okay.
I thought he worked in his medic.
He has his medic, but he is not
Fulfilled
qualified.
his-
He's not, yeah.
Not qualified, okay.
Right. He still has to do
That'll
wrap-up.
go up again when he gets his medic, but that's good. That's what we, if we can get him to pull some shifts as medic, that's a good thing. So,
Right, but we don't have an on-call paramedic right now position on the payroll, so
Right.
he would still fit in as FFE until somebody presents an option to categorize that.
yeah, that, or maybe just, you could even sign up for shifts and those on-call. I don't know.
Go with the per diem as a paramedic.
I was just
right?
curious. I probably asked more questions than I should on it.
No, I follow where you're coming from.
So,
So do I have a motion to accept the step down, as he still wants to be available to help the town where he can, but he took another position that obviously is.
I'll make that as a motion that we appoint Kyle Gorham to a firefighter EMT step 3 volunteer position. Is that right?
yeah.
On call.
On call,
Yeah,
on call, I'm sorry.
I'll probably a little delayed in the sale. I'll abstain from voting on it. I've got to look into the details. What I understand is, since I am a special municipal employee, and as long as I am registered that way, I can participate in these things. But for now, I'll still abstain from it, just to like clarify that.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk to the ethics and make sure that I'm understanding that correctly. But I believe I am allowed to participate in all these as a special municipal employee. So
I think it's a fine line. I think
so
what
it's
it is
easy
you're
to
allowed
s-
to be on the board, but you do have to recuse yourself on certain things that relate directly to your department.
Yeah, the way they
But
explained it, the way
it's
they
a
explained it
colleague
is-
versus what do you?
Yeah,
sub-
it's just, it's easier to stay out of it, but it's frustrating because I have good input on it, but I'll abstain from it.
Right.
But that's my opinion. If we could keep an extra medic, an extra EMT and future paramedic on call, it's good for us. That's.
Yeah, and I would second this
And I have no
anyway.
benefit in this.
So I'll second it.
Benefit.
And if there's further discussion, any? Okay. Call for vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
201. It's almost
Volume's
like
back
hockey
on.
score. Huh?
We're back up on.
Okay. So we are back up live. Anybody that did not get to hear the audio, or maybe you do, but I'm just gonna run it real quick. We authorize Quabbin Community Band use of town property, Circle of Song, use of town property, and a wage authorization for an on-call firefighter EMT. We are now gonna get back to the regular agenda and public comment. Sam, earlier you were ready to, but then we delayed due to the video.
Yeah. I consider this important, this about sitting up here instead of sitting back there. We've been speaking about we have established a solar bylaw that everybody, I guess, is happy with. Now, we've been talking about solar on town farm property, town-owned property, for a long time. And we've been I think we've been dragging our feet. So I guess I'm asking that this board discuss, however you discuss it, and make a motion to have a request for proposal for someone or however you go about doing it. I'm unfamiliar with the process. To open the town up for companies to become interested in placing solar for the benefit of the town on town-owned property, not to exclude Town Farm Road, which we know this could be a possibility of some contamination because there used to be a dump there, not to exclude the town barn, as Charlie calls it, public safety, not public.
DPW.
DPW building.
Public
And
Works.
clearly, a component within this request for proposal to outfit the public safety building with enough panels on the roof or on the side of the public safety building so that the public safety building become a net zero project. Because currently, the public safety building costs $30,000 a year for heat and electricity. I don't know what other fuels it uses, and it may not use any at all. I'm not familiar. So that's what I'm asking you guys to discuss and come up with a plan. And maybe at the same time, you could think about establishing a committee to where these proposals can come into, so this committee can evaluate your proposals, because Andrew's pretty busy. You guys only come 3 or 4 times a month to discuss, and I think this is a very important focus for the town, because each megawatt of electricity, each megawatt of established capacity gives the town $25,000 for personal property taxes. It may decline if it's personal property, but if it's a pilot, it doesn't decline. So I think it could be a moneymaker if we manage it properly, and I'd like you guys to make motions or do whatever you might do to get it done. Thank you very much. Any questions for me?
We may, just sit still a minute.
Oh, okay, good. I just didn't know if I could sit back down in my seat on the walls, fly on the wall seat.
You're nice and close to the microphone, let's keep you here for a
The
minute.
conversation's still important, you should stay at the
Okay,
table.
thank you. Good.
I do know that we've already discussed once, and I think we made a motion to start pursuing an RFP and RFQ to pull in the information we need in order to write one, which starts with, at a minimum, identifying the town assets, the locations, where we think it's either one viable or two, not gonna get a very negative response from the town to even attempt.
Excuse me?
For example, we wouldn't say the library, because we know putting solar on that library is not gonna pass muster in this town.
Right.
So that wouldn't be on our asset list of
Oh, I
places.
see, okay.
So we need to go through what we own, and then identify which ones we want to put into a list saying, please have such and such a company review and provide proposals on how to develop solar that would be in the best financial interest of the town. Something similar to that. I know there's a lot more details in it. I've gone through many a contract with this stuff, but I would think we would want to keep it more broad like that. And if we look at chapter 25, you can do just that. Give me a list of assets, tell them the type of energy conservation measures you want to look at. You get qualifications. You have a DSB board that goes through and identifies the winner based on the qualifications, and then they kind of go almost through an audit of your areas, and then they can present you options of what you can do with each. And then at that point, you got to sit down and decide where you would want to move forward, whether, and again, the option could be a lease, it could be a power purchase agreement, it could be a town buys it, installs it, owns it, multiple options. But the idea is get this bid winner to come and tell you, here are your options, and this will give you this benefit, but it might cost you more. It'll give you this benefit, it'll cost less, but you'll get less of a benefit. Or here's one, but you're gonna have absolutely no control over the site if you go this way. You can just say, you get all the money in the world from it, but once you say go, you just gotta back up and let them do it and let the planning board play their role. So it would vary, and it would be something that I think we would wanna look at, but it might be better to start that way, is just list the sites and then develop enough of a spec saying, you'll do this, which will lead to this, which will lead to a 20-year guarantee, because if you're using chapter 25, it has to come with a guarantee in production or a guarantee in savings that you can then use to justify the investment. So there'd be a combination of things to look into, but the other part of chapter 25 is you can bid it like a design build. So you don't have to have it designed and then go rebid it for construction side. You can also include in it any maintenance, any other type of monitoring, all of that. For the life of the solar array, you can put into this contract. You know, so you can write that into the contract if you so choose, but you don't have to say that you're committed to any of those costs up front. You just put in the RFP these are the things that we're looking, these are the things we're gonna want proposals for. They take it, and then the first thing you do is you define more critical after someone wins an award. You define specifically the scope they're gonna do for you, and they'll tell you the cost it's gonna do just to get to the point of, now we've audited everything, and now we're gonna give you these proposals. That's a cost to that company to put that effort in.
At that stage, yes.
Right, so either now this varies, but the contract I'm more familiar with, what they'll do is they'll say, here's a price for me to just get you that info. But if you do choose one, we'll roll this price into the actual installation price. So you won't have to, but if you don't choose any of them, there's a minimum what they would call break fee. All right, you propose everything, but none of them work for the town. We can't financially do it, or we can't do such and such. And you walk away, then you still got to pay that minimum for the effort they did to do the audit of your sites and just give you the proposals of. And these proposals aren't breakdown detailed. They're big picture. If you lease this, if you own this, if you PPA this, how would you like to move forward, and what type of, so it would give you like a general size of a solar array. But it's not going to give you a complete layout on the land. It's not going to give you a complete detail at that stage. But then you would need to say, okay, now give me the cost to go into that detail. And when they do that, if you choose to move forward, then you just start paying based on the progress of the installation. And that pays for all the audit work in the beginning as well. That's my experience with the contract I've done. Now they can vary, because it is kind of up to a town's choice on how they want to write that contract.
This sounds more specifically if we chose to build our own, because you'd be looking at all those aspects. If we did an RFP, unless I'm misunderstanding the RFP, we're going to put a request for proposals for leasing our land to put a solar on and see what it would generate, what people would propose to us, what they would offer us to lease the land for the solar use. If somebody at that point won that, we could finalize the details and not pay out of pocket, unless we're looking for bids to build it ourselves. I'm very, very hesitant to go into the ownership side of it. I just am. It's putting this town in the solar business, and even if we're subbing that business up to somebody wholly, I'd rather look at a clean number. If we lease you this land to use, like a cell tower, what do you give us for it? What's our recurring revenue, and keep it simple. Talking with Sam some, and have talked with Andrew some about it lately as today. Concerns are availability of getting into this. These programs are disappearing. The programs that are out there are filling up, and whether or not we can even get in on a current program is, possibly it's not even available to us. So the longer we wait, the less likely it is we'll have an option to do this. So I would, I think the town farmland, the old landfill, is a great place to do it. There has been talk of concern of, well, it's an old landfill, it's not capped by today's standards, they may want us to cap it. I think if we don't touch it, they're not gonna have us touch it. So I'm not worried that the EPA or the DEP is gonna say, oh, you gotta go cap that now. It's been there forever. But that may be something we have to look at. If we're gonna be allowed to work on it, we'd have to cap it. And we could have an RFP, and before it goes forward, say it would be contingent upon the site being approved by the DEP or EPA. And if it got to that point and we want to do it, and then they said, yes, we want certain work done with it, we go back to the person with the proposal and offer them the opportunity, do you want to absorb this cost and continue forward, or do they want to back out at that point? And I think we can still do it without incurring a cost to us or any significant expense. And I do think that looking at that property, it would be a smart thing to do. As far as the roof goes for the public safety building, I don't know. I don't see the harm in it. If we could get that building towards net zero, or get something that gave us a severely reduced cost down there, it might be smart, because we know they're using much more electricity I think we were anticipating. The last site he mentioned would be the DPW, the highway site for the public works down there. We had looked at proposals, I think about a year ago, but our finding with the company we were going with was offering us a discounted rate, which came down to something trivial like $5,000 a year, and we said it wasn't worth it. But that was looking at a buyback rate in electricity is all we're gonna get. If we looked at that as a straight lease, maybe it's worth considering as well. So I think we might wanna put a request for proposal out for those two sites to lease it and see what people would propose that we could do with the public safety building and go ahead and move forward with this and get this rolling. Because I think if we go the process of, you know, Sam to save a committee, and we've done a lot of committees, we put a committee out, we delay 6 months before, 4 months before anything gets done. And then they make their findings, and then they come back to us, and we're, you know, now we're 6 to 7 months down the road, and we've missed every opportunity. And I think if we're gonna take a chance, it's time to pull the trigger and put an RFP out to get price for what somebody would offer us to lease that land up at Town Farm and lease some of the land down at the highway. And if we did think about solar on the public safety building, the same thing. Give us a proposal for what they could do for us on reduced rates, or I still don't want to buy it there, but what would it cost to install it if we owned it? And I think that facility could easily hold enough panels to go net zero. It's a big place.
It is, but it's not as easy to it varies. You're right. It varies.
And hence the need for a proposal. Someone's got to look at it and
Right.
say yes or no. And the proposal phase, like you said, it doesn't get invasive. If I was to give somebody an estimate, I can give them a ballpark for something. If they want a written, detailed estimate on something, I'm going to charge them for it. And I would always take that off the fee. It's a pretty standard thing for business. If they're going to come out and look at it, look at the roof, look at the structure type, they're going to have an idea. Yeah, you're probably looking at, you know, blank amount of money or what this I could do for you. If you want a detailed proposal, they're going to go put 50 or 60 hours into writing it up. Yeah, we're going to pay for that. And
Right.
we're going to get it off the price later because it's part of their bid. But if we just want that number hard, we're going to pay for it. But we don't need it up front hard. We just need an idea of, are we in the ballpark? Can we net zero that reasonably, or is it going to be, you know, just throwing good money after bad? So I'd like to consider that.
You guys think?
I'm not opposed to it, actually, contrary to what some might think, but I just want to make sure that we're going about it the
Mhm.
right way, and any part of an RFP should be dismantling after the useful life is run out. I don't know how long these things last, I really don't. But
I think they're talking
I just don't want a
25 or
pile of
27
panels
years or-
somewhere that we can't get rid of neither.
True.
That's the, you know.
That's a good point, John.
I think if we're looking at the town farm, we want to look at both sides of the road. I don't know how far down we own on the northerly side of Town Farm Road, where the house used to be.
But just
I think
the
we
open
own quite
space.
a ways on that side.
Well, I think the key is looking at open space too, because Andrew was saying if you have to give permission to clear zones and clear space, that's a whole other ball of wax.
I think Town Farm Road's pretty built up now. It's
That's-
grown up, right? It's not as wide open as it
One
used
of
to
the
be.
concerns is whether or not that's gonna disincentivize it to, you know, irregardless of its history, or whether or not they consider that to be a clear cut
Is it more
deforestation.
brush cutting, or, yeah, deforesting is different than just little brush cutting.
Which puts you on a fine line of whether it even passed planning board. Because it still fits that, and even though we can call municipal exemption, we don't want to play that game if we don't have to.
All the reason to look into it and see, but.
You had something to say, Todd?
I did. In the solar bylaw, there's a decommissioning provision.
Okay.
That covers the, they have
Okay,
to put
good.
it front enough
An
to cover
escrow or
decommissioning
something to
costs.
make sure.
Mhm.
Good.
And in my understanding of solar is different parts last different lifetime.
Mhm.
So your inverters are anywhere from 10 to 12 years. If you do good maintenance, you might get 15 out of it, but almost nothing that has a circuit board you count on lasting more than 10 years. If you get more than 10, you're happy. So those pieces, they're more centralized, they're not nearly as much. If you own it, you gotta plan on replacing it in about 10 to 15 years minimum. The panels should go anywhere from 20 to 30 years.
Right.
The key really for most people that are like, what are you gonna do with it, is the racking, if they take care of it, is gonna last a lot longer. So you can actually keep the racking, replace a few of the fasteners depending on the type of fasteners installed, and just replace the panels And generally, when you do that, the panels are also gonna be more efficient. So when you replace the panels, you start all over and you get another 20-year cycle. So the idea is the racking is your structure. It's whatever holds it to whatever. But the panels themselves are, I don't know, it's like replacing shutters on your house, but it just costs more.
A little bit more, yeah.
Well, it's surprising, it depends on the size of the array, but the reason a lot of the incentives are dropping and everybody's like, oh, you're gonna miss out, is because the cost is dropping. It doesn't cost as much to buy solar panels and inverters now than it did 10 years ago. And that's why DPU and DOER has gradually reduced the incentive as well. That and a couple other reasons, but the point is the actual market of buying the materials is coming down. So with the rate of inflation and all that, if somebody bought something now, you're still gonna pay for it before the system dies. That's how it's gonna work. Pretty much, unless you make a very poor decision in your investment and you go way over what you can afford, or you build way under, and so you're spending more money in the overhead mobilization and design than you're actually getting in the system. In other words, you don't get yourself something that's only a 15 kilowatt system where you're investing enough in design and installation that you should have put in a 200 kilowatt system. That's where you gotta do your factors. But if you're in the middle, you're usually gonna pay it off, but you're not gonna see it for 5 years if you own it. Now, if you're a lease, you see it the first year. And it's the leasee that is taking all the risk, but they're also gonna get all the reward if it works out.
You don't see as much by leasing it to somebody, but you see a steady, maintenance-free income, which I think is probably more important to us. I considered that my own house a long time ago, and the cost to buy was stiff up front, but at my usage rate, I would have been, paid off in, like, say, I think 5 or 6 years, and I'd have had a 20-year life. So I would have made a lot more money over the long term, but I had to come up with $60,000 up front, which I wasn't gonna do.
Right.
So same thing here. I don't think we want to front that money. I don't think we want to be having to figure out how to replace the parts and hire laborers to do it, or.
We're not in a situation either to be able to bond it long term.
No,
And because of that, I mean, we're not far away. We're actually doing a lot better with that. We're getting there. No promises, but we are going in the right direction.
And quite frankly, it gives someone the opportunity to come to town and make some money. It gives someone the chance to install these. We make a profit off it, and they get the chance to run a business here and make money. We're inviting business into town, and someone who's making money off the array has a good incentive to keep it up and running, which helps us.
Yeah.
So it's a good partnership if you can lease it to somebody, because they have skin in the game. They're not just putting it in and walking away and say, you own it now. They're gonna make sure it's done right and it's maintained properly, because that's their livelihood is what it produces.
Now, the only other thing I would suggest with this RFP process that I was speaking about, more based on the chapter 25 or something, where it's kind of like,
I steer away
get
from
people
it.
based on their qualifications, and then they'll tell you whether, and even if it was just lease,
Mhm.
I think what you're gonna get is still the same thing, which is primarily a middleman. You're gonna get someone that understands the industry, but they're gonna subcontract all the installation work. They're probably gonna subcontract any maintenance work. They're gonna subcontract everything. They're still your point of contact as an owner. They'll be the leasee, but they probably live in California, and you might get lucky with a local office. Now, in the RFP, you can say there has to be a local office, so you can at least say you can't be someone that's in California and you only answer once every 6 months.
We could say local designee, whether we need a local contact person, because, I mean, there's anything in life here where these things happen is you have investors. You have people that have money they want to invest in. Quite
Well,
frankly.
we probably have to make sure they're decam rated either way,
If-
because we're gonna get high enough where the money might force that, right?
If I had $60,000 laying around when I looked at solar, I'd have put it on my roof and I'd have been done with it. Because that money would have been back in my pocket in 5, 6 years, and I'd be gaining money after that. But that wasn't my position. But there were plenty of people that had the money that would be willing to go put that array in. Let me have discount electricity, so I save money right off the bat. And they'd be making that money, because they're gonna get their return in 5 years and quadruple it later down the road, and that's what they're in it for. So it wouldn't surprise me at all to find the money comes from a group or a collective or an investment fund someplace. But there's gotta be a person in charge, and we can certainly write the RFP that way, that we have to have one contact person that has the authority to speak for it, sign for it, and maintain it.
With everything we threw at the table, what do you think it's gonna take for us to get to a point of actually being able to publish an RFP for something like this? Knowing that we don't have all the details defined here at the table yet.
Going through some of the stuff that we've gone through in the past, I know we've brought, or there was a contact that specializes in some of the stuff that we had worked, that previous administration had worked with. I'll reach out to that person to see how much legwork was put in. Maybe there is something already established with her, but try to get a report to you by next meeting.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I think that the town is focusing this maybe a little different way. A way that's gonna take a long time and more bureaucracy. I met in 2014, I met with the president of a solar company who spoke to me about, we just took a walk up. We were socializing actually. We took a walk up and he says, this site will probably give the town $200,000 or $300,000. And I mentioned it to someone during a phone call. And there are companies out there who have design people and engineering people and finance people, and if the town were just willing to open the land up, certain land that only the town wants to give up, and let these people offer how much they're going to pay us a year for them to do everything. Remember now, there's a federal tax incentive, which at one time was 33 1/3% from what I understand. Now it's declined. So these people, if they put in $3 million, they're gonna get back $1 million theoretically, because they put it together. So I don't think the town needs to worry about how it's done or how it isn't done, as long as the town gets a check.
In response to how it's done,
Wait, let me
we do
finish.
have to worry.
The town just needs to get a check, and if you look at any of the leases of all these private solar facilities are all public record.
When it's on
If it's on
public land.
If it's on private land, the leases are all filed in the registry of deeds.
Okay, I got you.
Every single lease.
All right.
The only thing that's missing is some of the specific financial incentives which are secret. But the leases are all public information. And we can just be the lessor without any worry. And Todd mentioned that there's a provision in the leases and there's a provision in the conditions where at the end of a certain number of years.
That's in our bylaw.
That's in bylaw. So that doesn't have to, we don't have to worry about that. We just need to get out an RFP ASAP, because the longer we wait, we're not going to have an opportunity like Greg mentioned. And I know for sure that there's a company out there who's doing some work for some residents here who say that their project won't go up for 5 years because of something to do with a substation or something of the sort. So if their
There's more to it than that, but yeah.
If their project, which they're designing now, which they are surveying today, not today, but now, isn't going to happen for 5 years, we better get going, or else we're not going to have an opportunity. So that's why I think we need to go forward as quickly as possible and let people start knocking on our doors.
And that's what we're proposing, is getting the RFP out there to get those numbers back.
Thank you.
Yeah, without the substation, there's no place to put the electricity, so.
And these people aren't going to go forward without a substation. But let's get
Right,
in
and they
line.
won't build the substation until they have enough people agreeing to put these in, so
Right.
it's you know, it's
So I
a
guess
chicken and
what
the
it
egg
is,
game, but it's getting there.
We just have to get in line, that's all.
Something else we might want to do is we can look at a concept of community solar that's more of a 5-town community solar that is actually putting the solar on Quabbin High School property.
lot of land up there.
And they're a huge electric draw because they're a huge building with a lot of lights. And I don't know how many of the lights they've converted to LED yet, but until they do, it's a much bigger draw. I know that recently in Worcester, we just did a fluorescent to LED change, and we dropped 36% of their electric bill just by changing their lights to LED.
That's huge.
And it wasn't incandescent lights. It was fluorescent lights that were already the 28 watt fluorescent upgrade from the 32 watt. So it was like the tightest upgrade you could make. And we still saved over 30%, like 36, 38% is what our math showed when we compared October the year before to October that year. So the lighting upgrades, but I think solar also is a benefit because solar allows, we can look at a couple things. Either one, do all 5 towns agree that we would get into it, support a capital line item that the high school would then put before all towns? So it's, again, it's all high school, so it's not really a regional agreement, it's just all towns involved recognize why the high school is taking these steps and proposing it. Or we can actually make an agreement with them as a district, therefore a separate municipal corporation, where the different towns might come up with certain funds where we say, okay, we'll pull it, they'll say we'll sponsor it, and then they can allocate it to different accounts to help offset the town's costs. So it's not just offsetting the school bill, it's actually, they can apply it to our bill at Henry Woods, New Braintree's town hall account. They could, it's just gotta be wherever National Grid has, it could be literally somewhere in Worcester, if it's a National Grid territory, that they could apply it to another account. It no longer has to be the same owner with the new AOBC financing option that DOER has approved. So it might be worth talking to them to see if they would even want their properties listed on the RFP for consideration. So we could get the info and then use that info to base a discussion with other towns and municipalities. At a minimum, Ruggles Lane might be one we would look at. Because
I think
we have more say in that.
A quick call to Dr. Muir would give us an answer if she would like us to look at that in the RFP and conclude it, I would think.
That, or see how far they've done it themselves, because there's got to be some level of review they've made themselves. I don't think they're living on an island and in a box. I'm sure they've considered it a few times. But what stopped them? And maybe it's just they don't feel they're going to get buy-in, but if the numbers show it, then I'm not opposed to buying in. But we're going to see if the numbers show it.
All the more reason we talked about this joint select board committee with the school committee before about getting involved. That would be a good discussion for that group when that forms.
But for right now, I would just like to focus on
Ours.
identifying our properties that we think we should potentially have someone look at solar as an option.
And
then get some type of an RFP draft written up.
for next, if we have that for next meeting, that'd be fantastic.
Even if we can take the right steps to get there. You know, you might not have a whole RFP draft ready because it is a bid document that might need more information before next Monday, but I'd like to get as close as we can.
Right, start working towards it.
Yeah.
That's the goal, really.
Does that mean you're gonna talk and
That's what we just
take
said.
a motion?
No motion needed. We've already set Andrew on a task for next meeting to try to get the RFP or work towards the RFP. So hopefully within 2 meetings, we'll hopefully have something
Well, thank you for
to kick
listening.
around. Thanks for bringing it up, Sam.
I think one thing we want to consider parking lots.
Yeah.
You know,
They can be
I go to
pretty-
UMass and I see the parking lot at the Mullins Center, which is considerably larger than anything.
Is that what those little overhead things are? They're not just rain protectors, they're solar arrays?
Yeah,
Is that what they're doing?
they're solar
Exactly.
panels,
Jeez, I had no
parking
clue.
lots.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
smart.
Up at-
That's
up at,
embarrassing.
I don't know how they clean
Hanneman.
around them with snow and
Right.
stuff, but.
That's the Gardner Hospital. Hanneman, am I saying that right?
Gardner.
Haywood.
Haywood. Hanneman's still
Yeah, I just
Worcester
watched them do. I didn't
or
realize those
something.
were solar, so that's why they did that. I just thought they were doing a little snow and rain protection for the cars.
That's actually an incidental benefit.
It is.
And on top of that, it's a perfect place to mount electric vehicle chargers. Because you already
Very
have the
true.
structure to mount it, and you already have the DC power, you already have things that are much more easily turned right into car power. It's common anyway, from what I understand.
And they actually.
We just don't have a lot of big parking lots that.
But the fact that
But
I
the
seen
school
those and thought they were nothing than unique parking structures, didn't even realize those were solar arrays. That's,
Charlie Miller did a lot of research on it.
Oh, he did?
Yes, I don't know why it ended, but I'm sure
I mean, we do have
Great.
parking,
Thank you.
obviously up here, and we do have parking down by Rice Park. There's some good sized areas, you know, we're probably talking an acre and a half of land-wise anyways. It's not huge, but it's a significant amount of electricity I think they can generate from that.
Yeah.
Something else to think about.
And then you gotta figure it out, because the incentives apply differently if you're gonna do something called a standalone,
Yeah.
or if you're gonna do it behind a building's meter. And so if you're doing a parking canopy, you gotta figure out the challenges it might be if you wanna feed behind the meter or do a separate meter installation. But these are things that's what the RFP is about. Tell us what we gotta get through and tell us what you can pay us, and we can decide whether it matters to us or not. You know, the numbers will prove themselves out once we can actually get numbers in front of us.
Yep, agreed.
All right, so that was the public comment. Now let's get to the agenda. Thank you very much, Sam.
Thank you.
I would like to get straight to the adoption of the hazard mitigation plan. I know we have a member of CMRPC, and are you here also for that, or no?
I am here today, yes, but separate from him.
Okay, so we'll go with that first. Come on up, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, the board.
And how are you?
I am very well.
All right, good.
So for the record, my name is Peter Pelican. I'm an assistant planner with Central Mass Regional Planning Commission. For those that don't know, Central Mass Regional Planning Commission is one of 13 regional planning commissions in the state. And we assist 40 communities in south 2/3 of Worcester County, Barre being one of them. So as you may recall, I was here in January and gave the board a presentation of the draft plan and where we were at the process. And tonight I'm here to try to finalize this whole process by requesting that the board formally adopt the hazard mitigation plan. Since you've seen me last, the plan went out to public comment for a 2-week period of time. Shortly thereafter, it was sent to MEMA. It was approved by MEMA. It was then sent to FEMA. It was approved pending adoption by FEMA, and that's where we are in the process tonight. Once the board, or if the board decides that they're prepared to adopt the plan will go back to FEMA for one more finalization, and that will be the end of the hazard mitigation process for the town of Barre.
Do you recall offhand the top 3 items that are on the list for mitigation?
Yes, I have those. Right here. Some highlights. For structure and infrastructure projects was repair and replace the culvert and the bridge near the town hall. Purchase a generator for the fire station and the senior center. To develop a beaver and beaver dam monitoring system. Remove beavers and dams when appropriate and as appropriate according to the state. So preparedness, coordination, and response action strategies would involve develop and improve the radio communication with surrounding towns. Improve the hazard warning system and notification to all members of the community. Continue to educate and enroll the Barre community in the SWIFT 911, reverse 911 calling system. Some local plans and regulations is more of an ongoing and continuing process more than something that's new. But one of the things that the town would like to get out of the hazard mitigation plan is to take part and become MVP, which is Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Certified Town. Coordinate with other interest groups such as the East Quabbin Land Trust that support wetlands protection, river corridor acquisition, or reduce water runoff throughout the town. And one of the other highlights, or I guess maybe it's more of something that should be done, is to update the hazard mitigation plan on the FEMA required 5-year cycle.
Okay. Either of you gentlemen have something to say?
I guess I could add or reassure that since the plan was put out to public comment and the town had the plan sent to them in the draft version. The only changes that have been made and will be made are insertion of dates from the last meeting, agenda from the last meeting, sign-in sheet from the last meeting. Tonight will be essentially the same thing, be the insertion of tonight's meeting date, the insertion of the signed adoption certificate if you so choose to sign, along with the agenda from tonight's meeting as well. So very minimal changes since the town's last meeting.
And just for those out there, members of the Barre community, or more specifically the town of Barre, that were involved were the town administrator, police chief, fire chief, member of the planning board, building inspector, and DPW sewer operator. So those are the ones specifically called out, and I'm sure that they also reached out and many more collaborated in a variety of ways. So this was not kind of created by one person. It was a joint effort by multiple departments and multiple people.
The process started on the town's end back in August 2018, and the data collection process for CMRPC started back in May of 2017.
Okay. So we have not rushed this.
To say the least.
I'm comfortable with it. I think what we might want to do, how many people have we actually applied to be on the open space and rec plan? Two?
Oh, sorry, 3 including Charlie.
3? Because I think this 5-year plan fits into that committee's kind of jurisdiction to maintain both. That's a 7-year, I think, and this is a 5-year, but either way, they both need to be maintained and they kind of correlate. So I'm all in for accepting this. I just really hoping that we can get people from town committees to jump on that open space and rec plan committee so that we can get that updated, because the whole point that was brought up to us, no, I don't know how many months ago, or it's almost a year now since someone brought it to our attention that the last one expired. But we've got to get that one fixed, updated primarily. Opens us up for more grants to help us accomplish everything we're trying to do in both this and that plan. So we could really use the help for anybody interested in being on that committee that the technically is appointed by the Board of Selectmen. I just don't want to, well, either way, I think I would suggest we do accept this plan. I just don't want another plan that we have that in 5 years nobody wants to fix. And we're starting all over, because by the time we get to it, it's 2 years later, and you might as well just start it over. But we can only do what we can with the resources we have. So.
I will
I just
make a
have
oh, sorry, go ahead.
One question. By opting into this, are we, I'll call it inadvertently, placing any restrictions on agriculture in this? In terms, you know, I'm driving agriculture within floodplains and things of that nature.
No, this plan is essentially a FEMA requirement.
Pre-plan.
Yeah, it's a pre-plan to mitigate hazards, natural hazards. So in 2000, FEMA passed a law that essentially just says a town needs to take a good hard look at itself and see how prepared they are for a natural hazard before a disaster happens. So they wanted to put that in place so that they didn't just have to pay out every time a storm happened to rebuild the same building or bridge or stream or dam or whatever the case may be. They wanted the town to look at it and say, yes, this is an issue that we could maybe take some ease the burden of when the storm happens. So FEMA set aside a big pool of money for mitigation, hazard mitigation money. That by adopting this plan, you're essentially unlocking the gate to apply for grants for that mitigation money. It doesn't put any restrictions on land use, it doesn't put any restrictions on zoning laws or anything like that. This is just essentially saying, like, we've sat down and critically looked at our town, and here's some vulnerabilities that we have for a storm. Some things are as simple as street the suites twice a year, you know, or as needed. That's some of the mitigation measures are that easy. Not saying that that's the easiest thing to do, because you still need a street sweeper, DPW, and etc. But it doesn't always have to be grand scale plans.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, Todd.
Do you want me to stand in my way?
You can do whatever you like.
I was involved-
Claire will yell at you if you got no way.
I was involved with the hazard mitigation plan development when I worked for the town of Franklin.
Yeah.
It's an incredibly labor-intensive document to construct, and the purpose of that document is to save both money, but more importantly, folks' lives. This is very much a preventative document, and an ounce of prevention, which Pete has done more than an ounce of, will pay off in the long run if, God forbid, we actually need to follow the directions that it's contained.
Give an example. Tonight, the fire department is training with our forestry equipment. We've all gone to hundreds of brush fires and forest fires, but the season's upon us. We haven't touched it in 6 months, so tonight they're going through the equipment, making sure things run, going over procedures, noting where equipment are, new equipment we have, changing the procedures from past experiences. And Chief Rogowski has changed some of the policies this year for how we're going to respond. And it's just pre-planning. It's looking critically at what may be coming, and if you understand how you're going to act beforehand, which is the whole idea of any fire training, you don't show up at a structure fire and everybody just knows what to do. You've trained hard to look at that, because it is coming, and something is coming sooner or later, and to have an idea of how to react and have literally a plan laid out ahead of time that can be practiced upon, which it will be practiced upon. There's just smart critical thinking, and it's a good idea that the government's finally, one of the few things I like they do, they say that I think this is a smart thing to look into in advance and be prepared for, so.
This is very much the same.
Yeah, it is. Anytime you're pre-planning, you're critically thinking, because you've identified there's a problem that exists. And historically, we've seen that other people have failed dealing with these issues. So if we educate ourselves on it now, we'll know how to deal with it when it happens. And if you've ever been in any sort of circumstance where there are some extreme things going on, it doesn't have to be a structure fire or something else. It could be something as simple as a pipe leak in your own house. When that happens, if you don't already have an idea of what you're going to do or who you're going to call, there's a panic that sets in. And that delays action and causes more damage and more financial loss. So this is just a larger scale of being ready. I like it. And to that end, I will make a motion that we approve and adopt the Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 40, as it is presented to us today.
I will second that motion.
Any further discussion? Call for vote.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much, Peter.
Thank you very much.
Your effort,
This one.
as well as CMRPC as a whole,
This one, he says.
and the various members. It's got to be that one.
I don't know.
Looks the same to me.
They're the same.
I appreciate your time, and just as an FYI, since you're mentioning, since you just adopted this plan and you mentioned the open space plans, and it's in the plan to try to become an MVP certified town. Currently, the state is accepting MVP applications for the planning process, which is essentially the first step in the MVP process.
Okay.
And that is ongoing rolling basis until the money is spent through May 3rd. Applications. And the application for the MVP planning process is a pretty small lift. It's more chasing down letters of support than the actual physical writing of the application, just as an FYI to the town.
Okay. We should look into that. I'll talk to my
Find a letter of
counterparts in
support from
Worcester
you
that
guys.
have just done it too, to see what I can learn from it.
For 1 month, we have open on that. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's just the application part, not the deadline to spend the money that they approve giving you.
No, because
The money will be gone by then.
yeah, essentially what you're applying for is to hold a one-day workshop and then write a summary of what came out of that workshop of all the natural or the vulnerabilities throughout the town. And then it's how do I say this? For the foreseeable future, it'll be an annual action grant application, which will then open up the door to a lot more money
Okay.
for the town based on the found employees.
I think we should formally request that Andrew go forward with that, with our blessing, so that he can get into it. We need to make that motion now. That's a motion.
I second that motion. Charlie doesn't have to feel bad about telling Andrew to do something tomorrow. Any further discussion? Call for vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
You're welcome. My work's done compared to that.
Yeah.
And let me know, Andrew, if you want.
Over to you.
Thank you.
Feel free to send me an email on that.
Okay. Just the letter of support.
The person that sits to the desk to my left in Worcester just did all of that application process, so I'm sure she can help with the process it took her. Being the city of Worcester, I'm sure the process probably was even heavier because
Yeah.
she had more parts to pull into the picture.
They had probably 100 people. I was at that workshop for the afternoon session.
Okay,
There was
you were
probably
there.
100 people in the room. For Barry, an ideal number would be like 20.
Okay.
That many? Wow.
You know?
Well, we're still
Hey,
square footage,
Yeah, oh, we're the second
so
largest.
it's, even though there's
Second
only
largest
one
city
per
in
every
the state.
23 miles or whatever that word came out, I don't know, but it's still.
Thank you again for your time.
Thank you very much,
Thank you for
Peter,
your work.
appreciate it. Before we move to the next item, I just want to make a note before I forget, because I tend to forget, and I don't want to say it before it's so late everybody goes to bed. This is Charlie Chase's last meeting as a member of the Board of Selectmen. He's put in decades of civil service with Barre, whether it's on the school committee, the Board of Selectmen, or even working in supporting local representatives at the state level. He's done a lot with his time in trying to just help the town through various ways. And I can't say enough, since I've been on the board, his knowledge, experience, and guidance has really helped us kind of keep moving. When I first came on the board, he was the only member of the board. He was the last man standing of the last regime that, you know, as we switched over. And so I came on with just him. And he helped really keep he kept the boat moving during that time of transition. And can't say enough about that, and the fact that he didn't do it just for that. He stuck around for another term. He's really committed, and he's really helped the town out. So for me, I just want to say thank you, Charlie.
Thank you, thank you. I've said it several times, I thank the town for giving me the opportunities, and I have to say one other thing, and thank my family, obviously, but I've enjoyed working with the various board members over the years. I think I've made friends for life, and that's something that you can't put any values on, but some of them aren't with us anymore. But I really enjoyed working with, with you gentlemen, and Andrew, Sandy, and the other administrators we had, Lorraine in particular. But I've enjoyed working with my colleagues on the board. They've all brought something interesting to the table, something unique, and without exception, they've had the same goal, and that was to make Barre a much better town. And I may not have agreed all the time and whatnot, but I know that that was their goal. That was the same as people I served with on the school committee, or I worked with at the State House that represented Barre, and I enjoyed that job very much. And just as a way of parting, we're very fortunate to have the level of representation that we have in Boston. We've had Steve, and I worked for Senator Wetmore, and now we've got Ann and Donnie Berthium, and having been around the State House, we could do a lot worse. We could do it. I mean, they are extremely, the people we've been very fortunate. They were very, very professional, and I learned a lot in that job about government and how it functions. But I just wanted to say that the people I worked with on this board you know, when they say it is a select board, it really is a select board. And the town has put very, very good people on this board over the years. I think that that's one reason we haven't had a lot of the problems some communities have had. But I've enjoyed working with my colleagues on the board. They've been very, very good people, and very good to me, and very good to work with. So that's about all I have to say. But thank you, gentlemen.
You're staying on in a couple committees still, or are you?
Don't know yet.
No, well, I hope you do.
Thank
I hope
you.
do. I think your experience is invaluable
Thank
in this
you.
town. And I would appreciate it having you.
I'm going to miss it.
I know.
Yeah. Thank you.
For about 2 days.
Thank you.
No, it's,
And then he's gonna realize the freedom that just came to him, and he's like,
I won't for a
Miss
while.
what?
I won't for a while. A few weeks from now, when you're getting ready for town meeting, I'll say, geez, I'm kind of glad I'm not there.
all right, the weeks preceding that.
When we take that marijuana bylaw in for yet another crack, I'll say, maybe it's not so bad. I can sit on the other side.
You can stir the pot from the audience and ask all
That's
the
right.
bad questions we don't want to hear.
I can sit there and say, this would never happen when I was on the board. Like all the-
that'll be perfect.
All the other ex-selectmen, what are these
Just
guys
be
do?
waiting to cue Charlie.
Yeah.
Charlie, go ahead and stand up, tell him. This wouldn't have happened. Right, yeah,
This
understood.
never happened
What
before.
are you guys
And you're right,
thinking?
Charlie.
No,
But yes,
I
I,
think when people find out just how complicated some of these issues are, they would have a much greater appreciation.
Yeah, no, they won't.
Yeah, it's-
Because they'll never know.
No, they won't.
They will
They-
never know. But that's okay.
So thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. I really do appreciate all you've done.
So, I guess the next item on the agenda would be the review of the host community agreement. I just got in my mailbox and it showed up over the weekend. We did get a couple comments from the planning board, so we'll incorporate them. I just noticed so I appreciate them taking the time to get some comments to us for this meeting, so we can kind of just put it out there again. And I do know that Castle Rock Agricultural Enterprises has also submitted a revised host community agreement, somewhat based on our previous comments,
Is that
which
what we have
weren't
is-
much.
This is their revised?
This is their revised, and like I said, I just got the planning board's handwritten, but I'll share
You
them,
guys
make
have- I was
copies,
gonna say,
but
I saw
it's,
this, I didn't see that.
it's
yet,
just
so
a
there
couple
was
of hand marks, there's not a lot,
There's not much
so
that's material.
we'll
Stuff-
bring it all up at
Stuff
the
we
same
can cover tonight
time,
meaningfully.
and then we'll make sure we have copies of this for you guys too, to review at your leisure, just to review
Well,
it.
if it's minimal, and we can cover it tonight, that would be nice to.
Oh, yeah, it is that minimal. I
Okay,
think it'll
then
be
let's-
easy to,
let's-
but I just wanted to make sure if you wanted, you got the copy to read at your own.
No, I'd like that too, but if it is minimal, I'd like to try to keep it moving as well.
So, what I would like to do is start with your proposal, your revised proposal.
Yep.
We'll kind of work through the beginning, identify anything where you may have identified a change from the last. And where parts fall in based on what he was reading, we'll kind of make sure we bring it into the same concept. I don't know how much. Okay, so this, he had some comments on more your overview, which wasn't really part of the revision. So we'll just make sure that those comments, we pay attention to these sections in the host community agreement and see if it is actually addressed or not. You had 4 main sections in there. On the overview, the first item he called out, well, with the business model, you mentioned only natural pest control. He brought up a good point where we've come to learn that the word natural is not very universally defined. So you may want to figure out what you mean by that and be more clear. Because us reading natural pest control, it doesn't really mean anything, because it just means, I don't know what it means.
Is that something you would be looking to have in the host community agreement?
It depends. It's something that you presented that you would be doing, so we don't know what that means. So what does that mean to you?
Does it
Because
mean
it may or may not affect.
I heard a flock of sparrows are gonna eat insects, or does it mean a natural organic spray, or does it mean a specific type of, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's very, very vague at that point.
So I do have a more specific answer. I don't know if it can be absolutely specific at this point, but our goal is to use, if we use things that would be termed pesticides, that they would be organic. But we also hope to use, you can introduce insects, you can introduce other plants that reduce fungus and mites that marijuana are susceptible to. So our goal is to avoid using toxic chemicals that collect in the environment.
So could you incorporate the word native when using any plants or insects?
Yes.
Because
And I
that's
understand.
really critical, otherwise we can just have real fun in the dealing with
Right.
your headache you created in our town.
No, I understand exactly what you mean by that, and I have headaches on my land already from invasive species that were introduced 50 or 100 years ago as ornamentals. And it's gonna take a lot of work in coming years to fight those back.
Yeah.
I mean, and those issues are very much towards the front of the property where we live. The area where we propose to put our facility, by happenstance, does not have a lot of invasive species in it. I mean, we have a forestry plan, which if you or the planning board or the conservation committee wants to look at, we've had a forestry management plan put together, but we haven't really had a chance to start putting it into effect yet.
I would trust that you're gonna manage that, protect your own assets, and I'm less concerned about your forest management plan than I am. Like I said, that's why I commented sparrows is something you talk about bringing a living mitigation in versus chemical and such. So perhaps defining something as we may be bringing in predatorial insects for the for protection, and give a couple examples might be sufficient. But keeping as Matt suggested, that it's going to be a local as opposed to a imported species of either insect or plant, making very sure that we're not doing any sort of introduction of new species, both organic or living.
Understood, sir.
We may want to, in order to incorporate it into the host community agreement,
Just say that native would be sufficient in there, and let them give a list of possible uses.
native or understanding, but giving yourself options, but still keeping to the intent you're saying this is generally what we will use or do. If we want to go beyond this, we'll need the Conservation Committee's recommendation and the Board of Selectmen's approval.
I think we might want the conservation's approval before they introduce any.
Well, it's just a recommendation.
Yeah, but if they're gonna introduce a species of something to eat insects, I think if we introduce something that might, I don't know, we'll check and see.
Well, that's what I'm saying, they can submit the list, and hopefully they're identifying only things that are native.
Right.
And we can then, before we approve it, go to our brothers on the Conservation Commission or Planning Board and say, what's your experience, can you look through this? And then we can take that and then incorporate it and say, okay, we approve what you're submitting at this
And
moment.
possibly, you might already have a list of things that you might, depending on what type of insect you're trying to get rid of, there might be 3 or 4 different things to try.
That's what I mean, you kinda already know what
You
your-
might be able to give us a list
your
of,
box is.
to include possible use of the following things. We don't want you to say we're gonna use this and this.
Right.
But if you had it just a general list that gave an idea of what you might want to use, and not need to go for any approval outside of that list, that would let us pre-approve that list with the environmentals.
There might be an industry standard herbologist type thing out there you can refer to saying native plants or insects
There is,
Per
actually.
whatever.
per
code
this
yep.
thing will only be used to,
And that can be incorporated into the agreement.
so I'll let you look into that yourself so you can propose what you're thinking, but
Sure.
something that we can say, if it's not on the list, then you gotta go back to either Conservation Committee or the Planning Board and say, we wanna alter this because we found something different, but it has been identified as non-invasive or native, but it just didn't end up on that list. I don't know, I'm just saying, I don't wanna put you in a box you can't find a way through, but I wanna make sure if there is a out of that box, you still have to go before someone to say, well, the box didn't fit the way we thought it would.
It can be a pretty big box to begin with, but it's,
That's kind of what I'm trying to say, and that way at least everybody knows you're following the guideline and that concept of natural.
You're looking for that as a host community agreement provision, that would be in the agreement.
Yeah.
right, that you're gonna stick with in this parameter for your
Would it-
pesticides, fungicides, and animal treatments for whatever.
And I probably wouldn't be quite so much, except that you don't fall under the Agricultural Commission or their jurisdiction anymore. So if there was gonna be regulation on that, they don't have that jurisdiction anymore. And I'm not sure CCC has thought that through well enough, so I'm making sure we have.
Right, that still gets designated industrial.
Nothing against them, it's just I don't want to assume that they actually incorporated fertilizer and
It's-
pesticide as
It's
much
deemed
as.
industrial, is it not, once we make it a marijuana facility, whether it's growing or not?
I don't even recall
I
what they
believe.
deem it. It's, all I know is it's not allowed to be called agricultural.
Right, it loses that. Obviously, we did this with the inside, and it's very different, so I think, not trying to speak for everyone, we're a lot more comfortable with a lot of this because we spent a lot of harrowing hours on this before the last time around, and many revisions. A lot of questions that we don't have this time, but since it's outdoors, obviously it's outside. That's,
Yep.
what goes in the ground, what you're using is not confined into a building in a closed, airtight environment, climate controlled, everything's controlled there. This is not the case, so you're gonna see, I think, more of our reservations come towards those concerns, that's all. That being said, it's a farming town. People grow stuff and have been using whatever for years in all sorts of ways, and it's not.
Not every neighbor appreciates a sheep farm to the left.
You know, I certainly know and understand that by law, it's not considered agriculture. But philosophically, what we're trying to do is agriculture.
I think the state's.
And I agree, and that's why I'm just saying the way they wrote the law kind of takes your standard jurisdiction and regulation away.
But it also allows them, when the state doesn't tax agriculture, and they want to tax us. So that's where it is, obviously. If they leave it as agriculture, say, hey, we're a farm, we're tax exempt. And that's exactly opposite what the state's after in this, is they're after the tax money. And why not? That's why everyone's after this, is there's money in it.
So with this, we're just talking about you drafting and trying to incorporate a paragraph or section.
Which may just cite a pre-existing rule of the species and things that are permitted. Sure. And outside that, you'd come back for approval.
The only thing on the site question they had is they're just gonna wanna see the map.
They have the map.
Map showing location, roads, and residences.
They have that. The
Yeah,
map, I
and.
gave it to them. But what it doesn't, it's not so specific that the specific area where we're going to have our facility has been surveyed. But,
Right.
you know, they had asked at a prior Board of Selectmen meeting for more detailed maps, and I gave them our surveyor's maps,
Okay.
which show the whole property and all of the abutters. And
Did you identify the box to which the furthest part of this development would reside within your property?
I have not.
If you do that, then it doesn't matter where the building lands in that box, like a greenhouse or a shed or, then at least they can then choose that box to say, okay, do you already meet our existing offsets within our proposed bylaw? If you meet that, then I'm sure you can get more confidence that when you do stand in front of them, they're not gonna come up with something new. But that's still right now kind of between you and them.
Correct.
But if you get that to them now, and they have a chance to look at it, it's likely we can work something into the host community agreement that may say that people aren't gonna change their minds in 4 months, as long as you don't change your mind in 4 months. About any potential special considerations they may want to impose upon you based on their special permit granting authority. We can get any idea of what that is now. That was the intent, see if we can get that to you so we can put it into the host community agreement, and then when you're going before them, you're just saying, here's this and here's a copy of the host community agreement so you can make sure it's all the same. Nothing changed from the day we sat in front of you before. I don't know where the planning board's at. I'm making no commitment on them, but I know that was the general intent of this process. So I think if you can get them that map where you can pretty much say, I'm gonna work within this box, that'll answer what they're asking here.
I don't think that's gonna be difficult to do. I'll just go back to my surveyors and come out, and they know where that field is, and just say, formally survey this field and impose it on the already existing map.
And you can give yourself a little leeway. You don't have to define the exact spot. If you say it's gonna be generally in here, unless a portion of that they disagree with, you have an idea and you can move it slightly. Make sure you circumscribe it so you're a little.
We are far.
That's what I'm
far
saying.
away.
I'm just saying, don't try to make your box too tight. You never know, you start digging, you hit a granite stone someplace that's 25 feet in diameter and you can't get around it, you're gonna move. It just,
Okay.
Appreciate that.
it's just a forethought, Doesn't mean it's gonna be that big, it just means someplace in that scope.
All right. So getting back to the host community agreement draft revision, on the first page, 1 of 6, the only change was specifically calling out the marijuana cultivator license up to tier 11, which is more specific to the state language, which allows them up to 100,000 square foot canopy of cannabis cultivation at the facility. That was a request of the town, so I appreciate you incorporating that in there. Page 2 does not look like any changes. One thing here though, let me just double check, because there was a comment on the overview. No, it was in the last one, I just want to make sure. Okay, payments, Part B. At the time Castle Rock submits each annual payment, Castle Rock should submit financial records to Barre with certification of gross sales with respect to such annual payment. The recommendation for revision here would be to identify an independent third-party auditor for that financial record. Do you have any concerns with that request?
I don't, if my attorney doesn't.
My only concern would be the timing, because the plan is to, 2 months after the operating year, get Barry its check. I'm not entirely clear whether we have an audit done in time to the town's satisfaction.
The audit
You
could
can
be.
submit it based on your information, and we can allow ourselves 6 months to receive an audit
Right, I was gonna say the audit can
and
be
rectify
post.
payments if the audit shows different than what you submitted.
Is that something you'd want every year, or something that you'd want to have the option for the town to?
I think it's
to
smart.
have an audit if it chooses
I think it's
to?
smart to just do it. Keep the appearance of impropriety and just let a third party. So in good faith, get your payment out off your own audit in your books, and then let the auditor examine the books post fact, and if there's any adjustment, we make it one way or the other. And just keep business and that, and just say, not because it's just this board, it's whoever's sitting here later and whoever else is involved.
Sure.
And for public trust issues, I just think it's always better to have an independent party look at it.
Yep.
Even our town books and our free cash every year have to go to the state for auditing.
It's easier for both of us to blame the third-party auditor.
So within 6 months of the end of the operating year.
I think that's reasonable.
Provided a report from an independent
Independent
auditor
Yes.
to confirm the payment.
Mhm.
And-
Right.
X amount of time after that report comes out, if there needs to be any adjustment, we make the adjustment.
Right. Confirm the payment and adjustments made if needed at that time. Literally,
The audit within 6 months. Any rectification of a payment shall be made within 45 days, either party at that point. Because what if they overpaid? We've got to be,
true.
we got to put in the timeline for us to say, oh, wait, we got to give it back. And that may or may not matter, because if it doesn't switch fiscal years, you paid us, we paid you back, it
Right.
kind of all balances out. But if it flips fiscal years, it's more challenging because of the way we have to go through the process.
Maybe
It's not
we-
impossible, but it just sits there in our books and sits longer. It's harder
Maybe
to-
we need to make, present a bylaw this year that gives us, in that case, the option to refund or rebate a payment made in the event of an overpayment. Give us the ability to rebate it within the same fiscal year. And then we could simply authorize the check back out.
What it would probably come down to is if you did overpay and then we went into a new fiscal year, you might have to wait till the special town meeting for us to just pay you back. In other words, it might take us 6 months to pay you back.
You'd agree to a credit.
But you know what I mean? Or credit towards the future year if that's something you're willing to do as a rollover.
But that's only if you mess up and overpay, so, you know.
No, I'm just,
Yeah, but
we gotta
yeah.
discuss it now to see what the
Yeah,
challenges are,
exactly.
so we don't write something down and
Right.
realize we look back and say, oh, I wish we didn't write it that
Right,
way.
you can
And
say,
we're both
yeah.
wishing we didn't write it that way.
It's true. If you could
But
just-
I'm guessing,
you could just
unless
use
you
credit.
really are bad at your books, that's not gonna happen. Because the auditor's really just gonna say you did your books right, more than he's gonna come up with a new number for you.
Right.
So, there we go.
Yeah.
We'll roll that in just as we discussed.
Okay.
You think 6 months is more than you need after the first full 12 months of operation?
I wouldn't think so.
Okay. First payment within 2 months, follow-up audit within 4 months after that, or 6 months total from the.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, for item number 3, the comment was excellent. Hiring local. So.
I think everybody liked that when they heard that.
Security came up a couple times. Let's see. Coordinate security efforts with Barre public safety officials and shall facilitate provision of security camera footage feeds to the Barre.
Since we last met, I have met with Chief Carbone once to sort of start talking to him about what his
Okay.
concerns are.
Most DVR systems for recorders, if you hook them to the internet, it's very easy to allow someone to log on if that's what you wanted to do. In that case, I think you want to have some sort of confidentiality agreement too, that stays.
Whole separate thing you guys would want to
Yeah.
sign with probably
Yeah.
directly to the police department for the
I'm-
accountability and accessibility issues.
My opinion, be careful with that permission, because that is, when you establish those passwords, you're gonna have an admin password, a supervisor password to run it, and you want to give a user password for specific for viewing only, unless you want to give them the ability to record or replay and things like that, which you can. But that's just, I did security for years. Just be careful of that on your side. That you
Anything
don't-
that you're giving them that can be recorded
They
becomes public record unless it's in an investigation, and then it's still public record. It just depends on when it gets released and how it gets released, so. But that's still generally in line with the comment, which was just recommend review by Barre Police, so we're you're still saying that. So I think we're on the same page there, so we've incorporated the planning board's comment on that as well, I think.
My
It's still
comment for
there.
the password protection is not to say that you need to restrict it from what the police see, but I'm saying if somehow if they have the ability to overwrite or to erase or to do things and someone else got that password. So I'd say keep your
Sort of
erasing and
a
overwriting.
read-only kind of
Right,
situation.
keep those protections so you make sure you preserve your data. So if something did happen, and so they have to come ask for a copy from you, you can give it to them then, and no one else could have gotten in it. And deleted that on you, so that's the only reason I worry about making sure, because if, who knows how many officers would share that password to be able to view the cameras, and have to. You don't want to let certain options go beyond that, that's all. I trust our police explicitly, but it's, you can always get them a copy later, as long as they can look at it, that's what counts. They can get a live feed and see what's going on is huge before they get there. I think that's probably what can't speak for him, but that was what I found before with police departments. The ability to look at a facility before they got there was what they're after.
Just to clarify on number 12, this agreement may be assigned by Castle Rock to a different entity only with the written consent of Barre. The only thing I want to make sure I'm clear here, and we haven't had a chance to have our lawyer look at it. This may actually be in the town's best interest the way you worded it, but because it's may be assigned to a different entity, maybe that covers everything, or maybe there's assignment is not the same as sale or transfer of ownership or operation, and so using the word assignment may not be as complete as Barry would want.
I'm gonna defer to Attorney Falk on that one.
So I'm just saying, I'm not 100% sure, but the key here is, if he's not the top dog making every decision on that site, no matter what the business relationship, the host community agreement disappears.
Sure.
So whatever wording you need to make sure that's understood, nobody else can be that person and have that control for this property under this agreement unless it comes before the board and we agree on who he transfers that to.
And they sign it,
That's,
and they would sign
that's
their
how I
own.
want it worded. So if this isn't quite that strict, think about the way you're gonna reword it. Because I'm gonna tell the lawyer I'm looking for the
They
exact
would-
same language, and he may come back and say, you're close.
They would sign a new agreement with us, with a new individual. So,
I get a feeling it covers it, it's just I realize I'm not a lawyer,
That
and
was our-
sometimes the
that
words
was our
throw me for a
intent.
loop.
Yes.
And that's why I said when I read it, the
Sounds good.
generality of the way you did it actually looks like it's in the favor of the town, but I just wanted to make sure. And as long as it was your intent, then I think we're moving in the right direction. Number 12, with the written consent of
Board of Selectmen.
the Board of Selectmen of the town of Barre. Planning board just called out not consent of Barre, but town of Barre. But I do believe we want to make sure it comes back to the Board of Selectmen,
'Cause
so
the
it's not
HCA is
confused as to which.
Specifically here.
Just so you're clear, so Barry is the defined term, which is the municipal corporation, and then we specify acting by and through its duly authorized Board of Selectmen.
Oh, I got you. So you're using
that's
Barre
on the
as the
front
reference
page.
back to the definition in the front.
Right, that's why
Okay.
Barry's used there. Barry is the defined term in the first sentence, and that
Yep.
refers to the town acting by and through its Board of Selectmen.
Then that works for me. I follow what you're saying. That carries through then.
Yeah.
It's in their first assignments.
So it's in the very first
This
paragraph.
paragraph.
By and between the town of Barre, and then it just, anytime you see Barre, it means the town of Barre.
Okay. So we don't have to state henceforth to be deemed as Barry, we just, the parentheses is sufficient for that? I mean, that doesn't.
Well,
that
anytime you see a
implies-
capital Barre, it implies it's the
It
town.
implies, but it doesn't state it explicitly. You know, henceforth referred to as Barry.
The style I use is anytime I put parentheses in a quotation, that's what that means. I try to avoid using henceforth as often as possible in legal documents, but you do see it.
But what I'm saying,
That's-
but I do
that's the
see it a lot in
intention.
other
I know,
documents,
I
and that's my
understand.
concern, is just because it's your policy to do
Yeah.
it that way, doesn't mean it's necessarily legally binding that way.
We'll just get a quick
Opinion.
legal
Either way,
review, and if
I
our
like it.
lawyer
If it
says
works-
the way you're
if it
doing it, I've
works-
seen it, that's gonna hold in court as
But
long
if
as
it-
anything else, then
You know,
it's eventually, is the judge gonna look at that and say, yeah, I
typically when I
interpret
read
it
any
the same way
documents
you
like that,
intended.
and the such and such, henceforth referred to as the owner. And not just parentheses owner, they say henceforth referred to as that, so they just write owner in the future. It's just,
I mean, essentially, an act by Barry here isn't gonna be effective unless by the Board of Selectmen. That's our intent, that's the way, you know, it's drafted.
Okay.
You know.
That's, we're on the same, we're in the agreement, I'm just making sure it's.
Andrew writing a letter on his own isn't going to do it.
Right.
That's not gonna hold up.
Right.
What if he has a big stamp that says Barry?
That might be great.
No, I agree with, I like it, and I'm not, the intent is there, I'm just making sure that
Sure.
that's, because I'm not a lawyer.
Same thing I was doing with the previous thing.
I go by the stuff I see all the time, that, on other documents.
Looks
that-
like what I think you're trying to say, but, okay. Notice, address is correct, 40 West Street, Barre, Mass. Would Barre Administrative Offices be the right thing, or should we have that revised to say Board of Selectmen, Town Administrator Office? Or vice versa?
Just throw in Henry Woods Building underneath it.
Sure.
40 West Street, Henry Woods
Yeah.
Building.
And we do have a suite over.
Do we want to, we'd rather just address it
Yeah.
to the Board of Selectmen, or?
Well, they're gonna receive the mail while we're not
Yeah.
around, so
True.
it's kind of the same office, the same mailroom. So I'm not
Could-
worried about that as long as it probably should just say the attention of the Board of Selectmen, not the town
My
administrator.
version has that, I don't know if you see that. Oh, okay. Cut the town administrator?
Yeah,
He's got to get it in the first place, but he's just got to make sure it's,
Okay.
Suite 697.
yeah. You know, like that, so yeah, so if it stays to the offices, Andrew's going to get it anyways.
you can always send a separate copy if you want to him. You know, but this would be your official submittal for any official notices or
Yep.
responses.
I'm sure we're going to get it either way, but just, once again, just,
Yep.
we don't do these legal things all the time, so we're going to be a little cautious as we go.
Exactly.
Maybe overly from an attorney standpoint, but
Therefore.
that's, you know, we are not attorneys.
Okay. There's one thing on number 17, and I'm not saying that any state or jurisdiction would say that. But if number 17 said you cannot have 12, the assignment, that's the one thing I don't want to have removed and the rest of it stay in place. So think about how you could word that and maybe help us with that problem.
Just one thing to keep in mind is that there's almost no contract with any level of complexity that doesn't have a provision for assignment, whether it's assignment can happen or can't happen.
Right.
They will often say, you know, assignments are free, or they'll say what we have here, which is one party may only assign with the explicit written consent of the other party. The likelihood that that provision would be struck down as unlawful is incredibly low. I'd say virtually impossible. The point here is to look at some of the provisions, since the Marijuana Act is new, that might be concerning. The Board of Selectmen, the exclusive contracting authority, most would say so, but it's not actually been tested, is our community impact fee. The fact that we have additional items in there, is that an issue? Those are the kinds of things that you might say that could get tested at some point in time. And if an impact fee is shot down in another town, how does that affect our agreement, depending on what court rules on it? Those are the things that you'd be looking for, not some of the items which we would call boilerplate, assignment, notice, those types of things aren't the things that we're looking at being struck down that would impact the economics of the deal.
Okay. Do you have other thoughts, gentlemen?
Well, as long as our agreement states that, or our bylaw states, which I believe it does, that any agreement has to go through us, and that we're not allowing a transfer within our bylaws. I think, isn't it in our bylaw? I'd have to go back and reread.
Well,
That would be
it would be a
that would be
proposed bylaw.
It'd be, but I'm saying that would be a protection for us right there, just the same thing. So like I said, if it's so unlikely, that would be stricken. I mean, you could add a line, except for in the event of item 12 stricken, you can add that line.
I got you.
But I think if we have it, and I'd have to, well, we'll see what the final draft is, but if we make sure it's in the bylaw that's covered, that, a host agreement is with one individual, and that agreement itself is not transferable until it's revisited and re-signed. That gives us a protection under the bylaws.
Do we
We could
know if this
also-
is on the planning board's agenda tomorrow night? Can we see what's
The,
posted on the agenda for now?
Discussion of the proposed bylaws is on the agenda. I don't believe that we are specifically on
Okay.
their agenda.
You were saying?
Oh, I was just gonna say, we can tighten up, and I'll take another look, and I'll consult with some of my corporate colleagues to get you the language that you're looking for, just to make sure you're comfortable with that goal, which is, if it's not Tom, you need to come back and renegotiate.
Yeah.
And I get that. In terms of the selectmen's authority, you're free to put that in your bylaw if you choose to. I offer that I don't think you need it. I've not seen any other towns, honestly, at this point, that specify host community agreement authority in their bylaws. It's, in a town, the Board of Selectmen is the contracting authority for anything where there hasn't been an appropriation designating somebody else to do it. But I don't think you need to put that in a bylaw. You're free to, but, as a legal matter, I don't think it's necessary.
I think it's unlikely if the business is transferred and sold that we'd make any changes other than, have the agreement set up that the facility operates in the manner that we'd like to see it operate in.
Sure.
So that's, that couldn't change wildly anyways. So I'm really not overly concerned about it.
Okay.
But I'm
Not that
just
it's-
just suggesting possible ways to look around it, but I don't.
I look at things sometimes outside of the concept of case law. I look at it black and white. And when I see that there's a chance that somebody at the state looks at that and says, nope, I'm gonna look at that and say, then we better plan on starting over. Because that's just how I feel. That's all. And so I'm gonna call it out as I see it, because I have no faith someone on the other side of the state cares what I think. And I'm not saying they're wrong, but I don't know who's talking in the other side of their ear and why they think there's another reason to act differently.
Sure.
So I'm frustrated, especially when I hear rumors that big conglomerates are buying out 50% of the product in the state, or the country already. That means they got somebody's ear, which means it's not happening in Barre. Because somehow you'll no longer have a road that goes to your house. Do what you want. I don't know. I know the contract's there, but we decided to move the road to the other side of the hill.
There's a reason they broke up the electric companies and the phone companies and all those things over the years when they got too big. And if that's happening here, that's a real concern. And I understand his point on that.
Anyway,
I do as
Do-
well, and it doesn't relate directly to this, but I would say again, in terms of my whole philosophy, I live there, and I absolutely share your concern about conglomerates looking to bully Barre. I think the chances of me ever selling this business, can I legally say, no, I will never try to do it? No, I can't, but that's my house.
Right.
I don't see that coming.
Yeah, when
and don't get me wrong, if life throws you a curveball and it's like you gotta sell it, it doesn't mean we're gonna sit here and say you can't. It just means we're not gonna let you to sell it to just anybody.
Right, as it should be.
You're selling a business plan, and that business plan is you. And that's part of why you're being received well.
I appreciate that, sir.
That's discretion we do get to have at least. One of the few things we get.
Do we have any further comments on the draft as it is, or?
I was happy when I read it before your concerns. I looked at it this morning before leaving town, so.
Maybe it's very good.
I read it. I was happy
I
with
think
it.
it's good.
And I like the changes, I like the suggestions, so I think we're doing well
And
with
I
it.
think it's a little simpler than the last one, but the last one started prior to recreational marijuana is legalized, so they're doing it under the RMD. So we had to put in things about registering with the deeds, that you're not gonna be a dispensary, just a cultivator, and
It went on and on and on.
otherwise I would have been doing the same here. If this license allowed you to go from a cultivator processor to a manufacturer to a retailer, we'd be cutting that up and telling you how far you can go with that. And that, we had that put in the deed so that the contract couldn't be the slippage. You had to go through some extra efforts to clear that up.
And the state pulled it all apart anyways. To a point.
Well, we had to redo it.
Yep.
Kind of that, after they came back for the recreational side, so we changed the funding, because of, again, it was no longer nonprofit also, so it's a different story.
Well, really hope not with this one.
No, I think, we'll see, we'll see. I'm gonna possibly, if my schedule allows, I forget now, try to hit the planning board tomorrow night, only so I can make an attempt to just say, this is what we discussed, this is what we brought up, and see if I can impress upon them to take one more look at that. If you don't mind, I will mention that you suggested you would bring the map to identify the box you're willing to work in.
It won't
And
be
see if that's
tomorrow
enough.
night,
No. I understand that, but I just wanna see if that would give them a comfort level to say, if there were any special permit granting things we would want to place upon that property, could we do it now? And that's the discussion I wanna have tomorrow night, cause if they think they would be able to make that same discussion based on the type of what you're proposing to do on your land and where you're proposing it, I would like to see if they could try to do that for us now. So I'm gonna, if I have the time and if you guys are okay with it, I'm gonna try to make that, not you, Charlie, cause you don't care after tonight.
Right.
Charlie can go there anyways and heckle you from the crowd.
I would like to just see if I can just try to continue this, work
Yeah,
together and
it's-
see if we can work.
It's wise, that's what they're trying to move towards, so if we can
I'll be
address
looking
those
to
concerns
develop
now.
Roundup Ready. Then you'll know you've got too much out there.
What he's just saying is, anything we can address now, because
Right.
their
It'd be like the
their
corn
proposed
growers,
special permit
soybeans,
granting authority that
It'll
they're
be
looking
just too
for.
much.
If we can cover those tasks now, then it
Who
won't be a
knows?
hurdle later.
Sure.
That's
That
all, so
makes sense.
it's just,
And we'll turn around another red line based on our discussion tonight with some of the changes that we talked about. And I'll
Nothing-
change
nothing
the
too
dates so you
extreme.
know what it is.
Alright.
nothing too extreme. I think it's
Um,
going smoothly so far.
I don't know specifically, so, and it's not in the agreement, it was part of your proposal saying this is what you think you'll do, but there's nothing binding you to anything you put in that proposal. This is the only binding thing that'll occur. So some of the other things they may have questions on, they would want maybe confirmation on, and it might be something that you may need to create a paragraph. Maybe a certain fence minimum height, maybe a certain minimum fence penetration, so in other words.
No need to note those, it's.
No, I mean, there may,
He's speculating
again,
what may
be
be coming.
generic, but this might be something that you would need to provide for the planning board to say, I'm not gonna have to look at it again in 6 months. So, keep that in mind, again, it doesn't mean say, I'm using this, it's saying I'm using something that will fit this. It's almost like building a construction bid dock. You know, if it fits this criteria, you can use anything that fits this criteria. Think that through. I'm guessing there's not gonna be a lot besides your perimeter fence. Again, security is something everybody's gonna defer to the police, so I don't think you have to lay out any of that when it comes to the monitoring, security monitoring and alarm system type stuff. But the box in your parcel compared to everybody else's houses, probably the fence type would be minimums that I could say, you know, if you could tell me that, I could answer all the questions the planning board would want to know now. The only other thing I could suggest is if you think you're gonna have anything that could create special noise, but due to your distance from anybody else anyway, I don't see noise being an issue, kinda like with solar.
I don't foresee that.
So, these are just thoughts, I'm just trying to predict what they might ask tomorrow. Whatever they bring up, I'm gonna try to take notes and reach out to Andrew or you guys, you know, as a group email, just to say, this is what the planning board was asking for, consider it, and provide what you think you can provide.
I most likely will be there myself tomorrow
Okay.
night. I was there last week, and I would say they were very welcoming to me and brought me into their discussions, and they asked me a lot of questions last week. So I think the
Okay.
process that you're talking about has already started.
Okay.
But I think you've defined it better than I have at this point in terms of the issues.
Just get a look at, you know, what are the things that a special
Right.
permit granting a process, would they have the ability to identify now? Not everything I think are they gonna be able to identify, but most of it you could probably say, if I work within this box, is that enough? Okay, we'll put that in the host community agreement, I'll work within that box.
It's nice that you've talked to your neighbors and brought them in early, and I don't know if you've asked them, but what, you might want to ask them, what would your biggest concern be? And see, because that's what they're gonna hear from people. What if, is someone gonna try to steal pot from you at some point? Absolutely.
Yep.
How would we address that? How secure? What kind of coverage? What kind of surveillance? Those type of things I think are gonna be your biggest neighbors' concerns, other than possible odor or light or sound. And those are the things they're definitely gonna want to address, as well as, like you said, type of fence, height of fence, and things like that. But I think, I'm optimistic that we are gonna be your toughest hurdle, and I don't think that's been too bad.
It's kind of
for you.
my goal, and I don't mean that, but
Not
if you
that
can
we're-
get through us, the goal is,
Right.
you've made it.
We don't want it to be tough that we're hard to work with. We just want to really we're trying to look at this holistically. We talked about this over the last year. We're trying to set steps up for anybody in any process in town that they deal with the town of what to expect. And we made a flow chart, or Andrew made a flow chart for how the marijuana process would go before, to try to give people an idea of what they're in for. And that's what we're trying to do, is make this flow smoothly. Make sure you understand what's coming after this, before you come back to us in the final for that actual license from us.
And related to that kind of flip side, I've said before, one of my overarching goals for doing this right is that if,
Sets a standard.
yeah, if other people come to Barre, then you can say, this is what Castle Rock did, and we're comfortable with them, and they're committed to Barre, they actually live here. How are you gonna meet those standards?
I know when we started last year, I started reading host agreements from other towns and what's going on, and looked to them for that. And the thought that someone may look to ours for guidance would be very satisfying. So I'd love to see it get to that point. But I'm hoping that when people talk to you about it, you can say that dealing with us was, there were challenges, but that we were good to work with, and we helped facilitate it, because it's a business this town is embracing, so we are going to do our best to make sure it goes well for everybody. And
Agreed.
I hope it goes well. It goes very well for you.
All right, then.
Thank you all for
I
your
appreciate your
time
time
once
again,
again.
and
Making
forward
good
to
headway.
seeing you. We'll
Thank you, sir.
work with you guys.
Thank you.
Need to go through
Ma'am.
it.
See you again.
It might
Thank you, sir.
be 2 weeks before we officially post the second public hearing, because we're gonna wanna see if the planning board has a chance to get some thoughts and feedback.
Right.
In the meantime, feel free to send a draft. We don't have to have a meeting for you to send us any based on tonight.
Sure.
And then, this 2 weeks from now, the Board of Selectmen will come back together, and hopefully by then we'll have
The agreement.
all of those parts together, and we can schedule the public hearing to get one last hearing saying, this is what we agree with them, and unless there's some major tidal wave of emotion coming at us because of that, we'll probably approve a host community
That
agreement at that
agreement.
time. So that's still kind of where we're at, so it still looks like we're right about the end of April, first week of May, that we're gonna try to make this work.
Excellent.
And then you hit the ground running with the low hurdles.
That's right.
Yes, thanks a lot, gentlemen,
Thank
much
you very much.
appreciated.
Have a good night. Got to that point a lot quicker than the last agreement did.
We're getting better at it.
I hope so.
And I think we're also better at
It's a
knowing
shot.
what we're looking for, and it helps when someone presents something that
Well-
is already in line with what we've been discussing for
It's
a
a
year.
sharp learning curve, but it has to be. And I still think the cautions we used the first time around is, as much as we had public objection that was taking so long, were justified, and I'm glad we took that time. I
Yes.
think everyone's understanding is better of this, including the public's understanding of what's going on is better.
So, let's get to, we'll talk about that Regional Select Board Alliance item real quick. This was brought to our attention officially by the town of New Braintree, I believe. Via a letter from the town administrator. I'll just read it again real quickly. New Braintree Select Board would like to know if, well, dear respective Select Board members Barre, Hardwick, Hubbardson, and Oakham, the New Braintree Select Board would like to know if you would be interested in the formation of a committee that would consist of the 5 regional school district select boards. Following the recent activities around the QRSD school committee and administration, it became clear that as little communication between the school committee and the member select boards. The New Braintree Select Board considers all 5 member towns as stakeholders and should be kept apprised in those matters. In addition to the formation of the proposed committee would not solely focus on the QRSD school committee, it would be an opportunity to open the lines of communication between the boards within the school district, which may lend itself to several positive possibilities, such as potential joint procurement, review existing, discuss potential intermunicipal agreements, sharing resources and ideas, problem solving, sharing ideas. Perhaps a town has resolved a problem that another town could learn from, etc. The Select Board wants to get an idea of the level of interest in this type of committee before going forward with the process to establish. In addition, please feel free to reach out with any questions or suggestions, concerns, etc. You may contact Chairman Randy Walker, and they provide a phone number and an address, or we can reach out to Teresa Kofsky with a phone number and email address. I guess to start with is this something that we're interested in? Is it something where we think we would like to have monthly or quarterly meetings, and would it be invite the entire boards all at once so all board members and of all boards can sit and have that convo? Or each board would like assign a representative to do that quarterly meeting or something and kind of jump back in and out?
I think a quarterly meeting's a good idea, and invite all, and those who attend. So I don't think we need to require, or we need to say we have to have the quorum of all the boards there. But I think, you know, if people can make it, it's better input, and it's going to be, really, it's an unofficial group we're assembling by the boards, almost like a club. I mean, we're not going to have any authority as that group other than our individual boards' authorities we have anyways. So I think I would suggest that we open it, do at least quarterly meetings, and invite all board members.
I agree.
Do you think you should have finance committee members involved? They did before.
If we have a big enough auditorium to do that, and that would be a good idea, because that's certainly the biggest relationship we have with the school is the finance. But I don't know what we want to do. If they're going to hold that group and hold a meeting, someone's going to have to define how it's run and what sort of rules we're going to hold at the meeting. Allocation of times to speak and topics. I mean, the idea of this board was to bring the select boards together. I think the finance input is important to that.
I wonder if it's.
Maybe you get a designee from each finance committee?
If we meet 4 times a year, maybe there's 2 times a year where the finance committee might be interested in, like, maybe the, anything that's like December, January, or maybe if, let me rephrase that. Even though we're saying quarterly, I don't think it best fits
Every 3 months.
June 1st, 3 months later on the 1st of, June, August. September, you know, it doesn't always fit that way best, because it might be better if we slip it a month or 2, so that in October, the finance committees all meet, because now all the towns are starting to prepare their budgets for the next year. And then the next meeting, maybe you don't meet, but then the next meeting you do, because then that's just before everybody goes to their town meeting. I'm just wondering if, because I don't know how much the finance committee wants to be involved in every quarterly, but I want to make sure however we schedule it, if they want to be there, it's not only to have the meeting, but also decide how they want to then go back and deal with their own budgeting process in relation to the discussion of the meeting.
It's gonna be public, so anyone can go that wishes to go. But I think it would be nice to at least extend an invitation to the chairman of each finance committee to attend if they wish, all of the meetings, so they're apprised to what's going on. They're gonna come or not come.
Yeah.
But I understand their desires to get the select boards involved, and I think that's a great idea. I think there should be more communication between the boards. The few times we've met, I think have been productive, especially on some of the community improvements we've made. But yeah, I mean, having input from finance of that, at least the chairman, to see what we're talking about, bring back to finance. And then next time they would bring input from that, from what they brought back to finance. But I don't think that's the idea of what they're after.
This sounds like it would be very similar to what's currently going on with the QEMP.
Yes.
But that's only going to go on so long as QEMP. This would be a good way of continuing that without necessarily needing CMRPC to keep telling everybody, do you want to keep continuing this? I think we do have some people on the school committee that are still very involved with making sure it continues, so I'm not saying it's only because CMRPC is there that this is continuing. I think we have, well, it wasn't just school committee, right? It's the selectmen from Hubbardston and was it Dave Deschamps? Gallant. Those two were the primary people at the last meeting I was at that have kind of been there from the beginning with the whole development of QEMP and the shared resources and the various things we've discussed at those. And just to bring up one thing, I'm sorry, I know it's similar, it's close. One thing I was happy to hear, which I didn't realize was happening from the school committee and the school's position, is they, forget the certification she said, but it was innovation and something else certification they're getting from the state. There's only like 4 other schools in the state that have it. But it was something about it's going to open it up where they can start doing some classes that are focused on manufacturing and IT, quasi-vocational type classes. Which I thought was good because I believe our region actually, that's part of our population that's not well served by our current type of high school. So by bringing some of that in, I think it helps retain more people in our district rather than whatever they call it, out of district placements and things because someone wants a vocational school or vocational schools have kind of trounced right on top of everybody else's school and they can do whatever they want. But everybody else finds it too costly to do vocational stuff because they're already built up. They've already got the capital built into it. So I think what they're saying is they're taking certain steps that allow them to introduce things slowly so they can hopefully build the capital to build it if demand says it's worth building more. And they had to go through some state certification process to help them with that. So to me, that was positive, because it's something I've been thinking that a little bit more diverse educational opportunity at this high school would probably help them. That was my opinion, and I think it would also help a lot of our local industries where maybe they want somebody that doesn't need college, but comes out and actually knows how to do something besides read a book. There's a balance. I understand that, but I think sometimes we overrate college and what it does for a person coming out of high school, other than say they're 4 years older. There's some high school graduates that are pretty smart, pretty mature, so you can get lost in the stereotype. That's all I'm saying. I'm not against college at all. I just don't think it has to be the only way you can get there. And in our region, I think there's plenty of reasons why someone should be able to come out of high school and start getting a pretty good job if they're given the opportunity. When I mentioned manufacturing for economic development, one of the things I heard is, well, we don't have anybody here that can do the jobs. Which makes me wonder why. So, anyway, I just wanted to put that out there. It was brought up at that meeting, and I think Andrew and I were the only ones from... Todd was there. He's a member of our community, but I just meant representing the town. It was just Andrew and I at that moment. So what's your thoughts? Do we want to reach out to Teresa and say, yes, we would like to start this process?
I was in favor of that when we heard that last time. I think it's a good idea.
Okay. Have we reached out to them?
No, you had indicated that you were going to.
That explains why. I will reach out to them. I will copy you guys because it'll be everything we said in this meeting, so it won't be like a... So I will do that, and I apologize for not doing something I said I would do. Okay, you got it. Any other comments on that? Thoughts on that? Okay, there's that economic development update, Mr. Todd Miller.
Yes, sir. How is everybody?
Good.
I just wanted to give you guys a quick update on the Clobbin Country project. I've assembled a finalized inventory of all the businesses and out-of-home businesses that we have in these 5 towns. And I've begun the process of updating them to the website that appnet.com has constructed for us. Appnet is a company that's based out of rural western northern Carolina. And they're a very analogous community in terms of demographics, in terms of geography, distance-wise, but in terms of weather and topography, it's very similar. That's the skiing portion of northern Carolina, which has a lot of stuff in common with what we have here. So they definitely understood what we were going for right from the get-go. They've built that initial platform. They've taken my advice and counsel on integrating some new functionalities within it, and so far we've added 169 new businesses, the majority of which come from Barre and Hubbardston. I'm in the middle of adding all the mountains of data for the other 3 when it comes to Ocam, New Braintree, and Hardwick. That's forthcoming, but this entire project is very much a living project in the sense that all these inventories, as businesses open and businesses shutter, as they move, all of these things, it's going to be continually in flux, which is why we added the ability for individual proprietors, out-of-home operators, to be able to submit a listing request to an administrator like myself, which then we'd be able to edit or give thumbs up or thumbs down. So over time, this is very much going to be a self-sustaining project, and it won't need continuous 24/7 oversight. If you have any questions, I can answer them now. I wish we had like a screen where I could show everyone the functionality. But
Typically I could, I just didn't bring a computer.
No, it's something that everyone can do once they go home if they'd like to. I can even pull it up on my phone and pass it around if you like. I don't know if anyone's had the chance to peruse or to kind of dig through it a little bit, but we got a little bit of press yesterday when Gardner's paper actually put us right on the front page. And thankfully we've also had Ryan McLean and Andrew kind enough to share us on the webpage, and soon Hardwick, New Braintree, and Ocam will follow suit. So the idea is just to have this one website be like a one-stop shop to help folks find local products and services and keep that money flowing within the region and prevent as much leakage as we possibly can. Can't prevent it all, but we can make a good faith effort to keep as much around here as we can.
Sort of
I know
like an
about-
Angie's List on steroids.
Yeah, just kind of blown up for 5 towns. Yeah, that's kind of the idea.
All businesses, not just trades.
But the beautiful thing about it is that once we get the initial bone structure of this stuff fleshed out, we're about, I'd say, 45% of the way there with putting all the data that we've amassed. Once it's fully up there, I'm gonna be working with, ideally, you guys here, and then also with Teresa, Ryan, et cetera, to come up with some themed itineraries. So if folks want to, for example, go leaf peeping, they might want to be able to stay the night at like Pine Acres and Ocam, but they might want to travel up 122 or 68, which would involve Barre and Ocam or Hubbardston, whichever. And we can form a more cohesive, like targeted response to folks that want to come here, take in the scenery and the natural resources, everything, and then spend a little bit of money while we're here, and then go back to wherever they want to go to. The idea is to have all these 5 towns work together in a cohesive way and kind of synergize with each other, because Ocam has strengths that Barre doesn't, and vice versa. And once you look at all these 5 towns in concert, each one has something unique to bring to the table. And we really need to have all of us working together because we all have skin in the game. We all sink or swim together. The issues that we fight and are facing, we're going to learn from each other and tackle them together, or we're all going to flounder together. But these things I'm not worried about in that much. It's mostly a matter of marketing. Most of the folks that we have, whether they're craftsmen or manufacturers of whatever given type, they're usually really, really good at what they do. There are some world-class and nationally recognized institutions. For example, Pine Acres and Ocam, they're nationally recognized within that one discipline circle for being among the best in the country. Unless you are in part of that culture, you wouldn't really know that. I grew up on Spencer Road, right connecting off of Beachin Road. I didn't know they were that famous within the campground community. And I lived there the most formative years of my life. I rode my bike in Pine Acres. I didn't know they were that well known. It took me to leave and then come back to really get involved, just to realize that that's something so remarkable right down the street. And the more that I've dug through and had the chance to speak to owners and proprietors and managers and all the folks that are involved here, I thought I knew these towns really well. I do, objectively, but I always find something new every time I dig into the data, always. And what I'm hoping to do is kind of showcase that for folks that are locals. Like, oh, hey, hon, did you know that there was an X in X? That's what I'm looking to really get people to discover, because we live in a place that's very special. We just need to really let people see it. All of our beautiful greenery and bucolic nature kind of masks some of that. What we really need to do is just kind of peel back the veil a little bit, give folks one platform to really dig into. The rest of it takes care of itself. I really don't need to do much work on that front. Just getting this world-class craftsman to be able to have a quality marketing platform. Because he might be a world-class carpenter or plumber or whatever, but if no one knows he exists, it pretty much just he shines brightly in anonymity. We don't want that to happen. So this platform is just really a spotlight to help showcase what's already there. We don't need to beef up or shore up anything. Everything we really need is already here. We just need folks to see it.
Were you planning on putting in a calendar of events?
There already is one, sir.
Okay. Because I know we had discussed before the coordination between the 5 towns and who's doing their biggest event, and is it all on the same day or not?
Just making sure we don't trip over each other. Yeah, I've already introduced that. I already put in one of Hubbardston's day fairs. I think it's set for May or something along that line. I can't remember off the top of my head. But those events can be requested and sent to me at Quabbin Country Listings, or they can be sent to my direct number, or you can just give me a call. I've had quite a few business proprietors just give me a call and we have extended conversations, and I build their listing as we're talking on the phone. I'm immensely available. All of you guys know that. So anyone that sends me something, it's usually put up the same day, or they're usually missing something, like a logo or a graphic of some sort. Then once all the data is put together, then I assemble it together and throw it on the website. It's usually good to go pretty quickly after that. It's very inexpensive to do. The entire cost of the entire website thus far as $2,500 to start up, with an extra $500, which was for that adding a listings functionality where folks could add their own listing, which would go to me for approval, editing or whichever. That was another $500. So altogether, all in, it's been about $3,000, which is roughly, and with $15 a month or so for hosting fees. I got it started off, but going forward in perpetuity, it was so busy that I had to purchase a higher package. All of that came out of the grant that got me hired, that DLTA grant.
So now I have a question.
Yes, sir.
When is Hardwick going to present to us what they believe the cost for next fiscal year is for you? And that, or are they even doing that? Are you aware of what they're doing?
I'm not deeply involved in the financial aspects of this. I mostly just ask, is this available within the grant pot of money? And they reply in the affirmative or negative. I haven't dug into the final details. We've done some
I believe that
rough
was
work
in our
with,
contract.
Right.
I've done some rough
It's-
work with Andrew,
With them.
and we drafted up a quick chart for that. or a
Right,
quick
we're
spreadsheet.
meeting on Wednesday afternoon to hammer that stuff out to kind of see who, you know, what the cost is for what would be the next 2 years, because really the grant funding would cover about 3/4 of a whole nother year of what we have remaining. And that, so it's really like, if you're committed, here's what year 1 or year 2 and year 3 would be. Is that feasible for you to, or for each town to fit in the budget? And right now, year 2 for us, what we did was structure it based off population as for a baseline discussion. For us, for year 2, it'd be about $7,500.
I remember when we did the contract, we fiddled with the renewal line a little bit to make sure we had the out if we wanted it.
Right.
Right.
But that's $7,500 doesn't sound like a bad expense to keep
Right.
it going.
That's assuming that all 5 towns stay in it.
So, yeah.
That's of course in
But-
flux if folks battle.
Yeah, we had a reasonable deadline. I don't know what it was, but we had at least a month or so, I think, to look at it, a month or two to look at it before we bailed. We have to go back and look at the contract, but
Okay.
we'll be all right. with
Yeah,
the
we're
number.
gonna work on the final numbers on Wednesday, come to an agreement to see who's still in, if anybody is deciding to opt out, and then
I'm sure
have some
we're-
numbers to you guys for the
I'm
next
sure we're the
meeting.
biggest number, because we're always the biggest population, so.
Yeah.
They'll be looking at less than us. I don't think anyone will get scared off.
That's true. I know there are quite a few significant projects coming into Hardwick right now, especially with everything going on with Gilbertville, as you guys know. There's some significant development that's proposed for Hardwick's Mill. I don't know how familiar you are with that project. I can send you everything I've got on it.
I know a
But,
little, but not a lot.
I can
So-
fill you in. It's a 360. It's a very expansive project. It's in the tune of a few $1 million, possibly more. So she's kind of been occupied with the USDA issues and that. But I can send you whatever Teresa likes.
Okay.
That said, this is a very, very exciting time. I'm, of course, absolutely biased in this, but this is a very exciting little venture. All the folks that I've had the pleasure of interacting with on the phone over these past, 11 days or so, every single person has said, why didn't we already have one of these? You know, why didn't we have something like an Angie's List just blown up and zeroed in just for our region? Because there's a shared identity within these 5 towns that would like to hire someone local if they can. Why would they want to hire Lowe's when I can hire Mr. Stewart down the street, knowing that that money's going to go help his mortgage payment and his daughter's piano lessons? Ways of keeping that local and really making it relatable to people. That's what really gets people to buy in and become a part of something.
It means a lot more to people in these small towns than it does to people in the city.
Absolutely right.
Definitely. You gotta be careful. You really sound like you enjoy your job.
I love my job. I do.
That's
I
good.
get-
It shows.
When I left undergraduate, I'm a graduate now. When I left my undergraduate work, I was looking for similar planning jobs all over the country, from Lubbock, Texas to Everett, Washington, all over the country. And the fact that I get to do what I love to do, not just for somewhere close, but for home. I grew up on Spencer Road in Oakland. I went to Quabbin. This is something really remarkable, especially for something so early in a career. So I can't be happy.
See,
Happy for you.
not everybody leaves.
I was pulled back in.
So I don't want to hear that anymore. Not everybody leaves.
Right.
Exceptions to rules, they happen.
They create the new rule.
You do it right.
Alrighty. I like it.
I
I
do too.
appreciate it.
I would encourage all of you to just dig in there and poke around. Like I said, it's not done. It was like a soft release sort of thing. It's not fully done. When it's done, I promise you will hear me. And once that's done, I'll start pulling in members from the BCB. They're already up there now. They're amongst the first entries of Barre that I did.
I saw some today.
Yes, yes. I
That's
tried
great.
to get scheduled in for their executive meeting that's coming up, but that's an executive session. I haven't heard back from them one way or the other.
Okay.
So if it happens, fantastic. If not, I'll catch them on the next one. But they meet quarterly, so that's coming up in a bit. But I really cannot be happier. I've got a great set of volunteers for the senior work-off program. They've been making a lot of calls for me, because with the umpteen hundreds of calls that I've had to make. It's impossible for me. I would still be doing them now, and I would be doing them for the next 3 years if I didn't divide this and really ration for that.
I'd imagine they're enjoying that work too, that
Oh,
it's,
yeah.
that they probably understand exactly
Exactly.
what's
have-
at stake here, and
they have
keeping
that
it
local
local to
knowledge.
them must be huge.
Yeah, you can't get that anywhere else. So I can't be happier with the help I've got.
Excellent. Very good. Very happy with it.
Me too.
Yes.
I'm of course available. Give me a call whenever you like. I have Harbor Castle Pizza called me at 11:30 a few days ago because he had an idea after he closed up shop, and we just talked it out. So you guys can call me whenever you like. My phone's never off. So whenever you need, go ahead.
Thanks a lot, Todd. I really appreciate it.
Always will.
It's-
If you guys don't have any other questions, I'm hungry. So get some food.
You got
Dinner,
it.
what a concept. That's got a couple hours to go yet.
Oh, it's already cold. I know that. It's,
No. You go eat. Thank you very much, Todd.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Great.
Nice.
It's a neat site.
Good to see you again.
I saw
Nice
the
job.
site today, the accident, it's a nice site, it's a nice site.
Yeah.
So I've got,
Sick leave.
we've got, I'd like to deal with this, waive the ambulance fee request that the chief had received from a gentleman that I believe is from Oakham.
Okay, yeah.
Apparently,
Thank you, gentlemen.
yeah.
Nice,
Sam.
Sam.
Thank you, thank you.
Apparently his insurance
Thank you.
company
I'll see.
only covered about $60 of a $2,100 ambulance bill. He's looking for some level of relief. He did not identify what level he's asking. He's looking for a compromised or negotiated in his favor due to the lack of additional insurance coverage.
I thought the chief said there was some sort of coverage from the towns if their people didn't pay. Or am I misunderstanding how that worked?
And it was, I think in the original agreement, it was basically that
That was
if
with
they
New
were.
Braintree only, though. I don't
Yeah.
think it was
Oh,
with
okay.
any other.
Okay, it was just with that agreement we had with them.
Everything else, I think the only reason we're in Oakham is it was just municipal. What do you
Mutual
call
aid.
it? Mutual
Yeah,
aid.
mutual aid.
Mutual aid.
Um, Probably because Rutland was dealing with our issue at the same time, so we were just circling around each other, helping each other out. I'm in favor of providing some type,
Here's my concern.
but I don't have much knowledge. Let's put it this way. If I read this, all I know is there's a person with a name that has this issue, but I have no clue about why he has this issue. Person could be 75 or 18, because I don't have that information. Could be healthy and it just was an issue. Took the ambulance and he just has the smallest insurance possible because that's all he was willing to pay for.
You could make $20,000 a year or $120,000.
Right, that's what I mean.
We
There's a
don't
lot
know
of
the
things I
ability-
don't know here to say that.
We don't know the ability to pay.
How do I waiving this other than it went to the chief, but now it's on our desk because it's our responsibility to determine it, I guess. But we're not getting an additional recommendation from the chief
No.
in writing. I'm not saying he did or didn't intend to. I'm just saying we don't have it.
I think he's forwarded to us because it's not his decision to waive the fee, it's ours, and I think he's just forwarded it. It sure looks like he just took it and forwarded it to us. But I agree, if somebody is in need of relief, if somebody's, if you have someone who's in a fixed income and a retirement income and they certainly can't afford this, I'd go further into relief than not. But if someone's in a decent financial position, they just don't want to pay it, that's a whole different story. And I'd really like to know more about that before we make any decision on it. So I don't know how we'd reach out to ask that. This is someone's private information. They're going to have to come be willing to talk to us about, or at least talk to Andrew about, so he can give us an overview, so he doesn't have to present it to us at the meeting. But if they would want to bring some sort of evidence to Andrew, or to Sandy, that they could bring to us on their behalf, we can make a better informed decision. But I'm not willing to, just because someone says, please drop my bill, to drop it. You did receive the service. And when generally we
just
don't
ask them to
insure.
demonstrate financial hardship.
Yeah, and have an idea of why they need it. And we have a question in the audience, if you like.
Are you able to follow up with him and ask
I'll have
for
to set him up.
some additional information to verify his?
Well, I'll have to send them a written request and provide a phone number.
Claire has a question for you.
Yes, Claire.
We've never had anything like this before.
We've had people that we've waived it for before.
This is a $2,200 bill for an ambulance ride. It was an ALS and there was an IV involved, and it was.
That's high.
There's a lot more
Yeah.
paramedic service
There's a lot,
involved
when you
in,
go to a medic service and there's other services rendered by them in the process, it gets there.
and they brought him to Worcester.
And it was
Seems
mileage,
like we-
but from Oakham, you would.
If somebody hasn't been able to pay for it, we kind of absorbed it.
We
That's
have.
the way I understood what
We
the
have,
ambulance did.
in Barre, yes, we have, and that's always been the policy for our residents. This is not our residents, this is mutual aid, and it's, part of this is mileage. There's several $100s of mileage because it was a long drive.
I think this person's also being proactive. They're not waiting for it to just look like he never paid it. He's actually saying, I look at this and I believe I can't pay it. So he's trying to ask forgiveness before it's 6, 8, 10 months down the road. And we just say, just absorb it. We're not chasing
2 months
these
ago.
people.
This-
Collections
the
is
service
chasing.
was 2 months
Go
ago,
back to
so.
OPM.
Pardon?
It was an OPM, our ambulance responded to OPM because they couldn't do it.
From mutual aid, right?
Right.
And that's why,
Yes.
that's what I
So
asked.
why shouldn't it go back to OPM to,
That's not how mutual aid works.
That's what I was asking before. We have an agreement with New Braintree that if their residents don't pay, they cover it. But we don't have an existing agreement with OCAM other than mutual aid. Mutual aid just means we pick the call up and we bill them. If we had an agreement that they're gonna pay us so much money a year to service their ambulance for them to do that, then we could put that in stipulation, which we don't have. But if I get an ambulance bill for $2,200, I'd be in shock. And it would be difficult to pay. Doesn't mean that he shouldn't pay part of this, or maybe all of it, but we're gonna look a little harder before we make a decision, that's all. There's not a rush, the service is done.
I'm a little surprised
bills.
that that's all the insurance company puts towards an ambulance, right?
Yeah.
$60.
couldn't believe.
But
That's
you
the
don't-
maximum
Well,
Tufts
you-
said. And yes, anybody cares, it's Tufts Medical.
You could
That
have,
would only pay $60 towards
you
an
could have
advanced life
out-of-pocket.
safety ambulance ride.
You could have an out-of-pocket expense with certain insurance policy where you spend $5,000 or $10,000 before they kick in on stuff. They
I just had
choose
to
the
call
level of
Tufts.
coverage they
They're
want.
a big conglomerate I never liked.
yeah.
They always made life hard on me, never wanted to pay anything, and then I'd turn around and say, what?
So I'd suggest we ask our administrative officers to reach out to these people and demonstrate hardship before we make a decision.
Agreed. Is that a motion?
I don't think we need a motion for that, do we?
Nope.
No, not really.
Let's not make it that official, let's just give them the chance to respond back with show us a need. And that doesn't say that, if they're making some money, we're not gonna pay them. If there's still a need, there's still a need. But I'd like to see what it really is.
Seems so low,
Yeah, $60 is a
I
joke.
can't even figure out.
But it's,
Oh, it almost looks like somebody like medical coded wrong. So Tufts is like, oh, here's $60 for a prescription.
oh, you got an IV, sure.
Like,
$60
they
an
didn't
IV.
count the ambulance ride, they just counted the IV drip or something, you
Yeah.
know?
I had Tufts and they denied me a test that I have every year for the last 10, 20 years. And I called them up and said, why? Well, you're not having any issues, so you're gonna wait? it didn't make sense. I said, well, were you a medical person or are you the secretary that's answering this question?
They're a secretary, they don't care. They
Yeah.
just, they're making money.
They're a business, not a doctor, but apparently they know as much as the doctors. All right, so hopefully you can get back and we can actually help provide some relief for his situation if what we're reading is accurate. Something else came up here, a donation of benefit of time proposal. So,
Yeah.
Are they renting or owning or?
Let's see.
sorry we took so long, Ellie, but thanks for sticking it out as long as you could.
I'll probably call you tomorrow and have questions.
Have you gentlemen had a chance to review this proposal of vacation sick leave donation?
Briefly, I didn't try to thoroughly understand every aspect of it, but I understand what we're doing here. We're trying to establish the means in which they can do it in a standard that we can uphold. You can't just say, give time whenever you want, be willy-nilly about it, so I didn't really try to go through the logistics of it. Obviously, the premise we've supported in other ways before, it's just isn't established for this department, and there's obviously a need. And it looks like we are talking about donating sick time, which has always been my concern, that's not a real donation. Donation of vacation time is different. Donation of sick time is use it, lose it, often people never use it, and we don't pay for it unless it's years down the road.
It's close. It's kind of mimics the police union
Sick bank.
sick bank.
Yeah, okay, that's
Right,
it.
so the police union
Except
has
it's not you have to put it in way ahead of time and you never get it back. It's more of a spot application.
And
My confusion here though is, even though you say it's not precedent setting, is it still intended that this would be used anytime somebody comes to us that isn't under that police union contract?
That would be the intent. So that way we have a proposal in place, and if there's any issues that arise from it, we have the ability to change it in writing.
How can we do this with union?
Because the union was given to the union as far as whether or not they had an issue with it. If we adopt it, they can agree with it basically. Just a minor amendment. But I did consult it with their union representative before bringing this version to.
They'd have the option to utilize this instead of their version, or they would be obligated?
They don't have a version.
DPW doesn't have it. Only the
Oh,
police have it.
I'm thinking the police union,
No.
okay, so they're union.
No, police
What I
does not
like,
have that.
what I like about it is my concern was always that, vacation time is theirs, they own it, they get paid for it if they don't use it, and it's real donation of time. Sick time, usually people aren't calling out sick unless they're sick. And the idea of sick time is you use it if you have to, and you can only accumulate so much. So allowing someone to take that money, which we probably won't have to pay out, and gift it to somebody, in the long run, it will incur expenses for us. It will incur expenses for it. But the fact that the receiver has to accept it as compensation and pay taxes on it, I think is going to make it less likely to be abused. And that clause in there makes me agree with this.
The receiver has to, I'm sorry, I missed that part, accept it.
As compensation, and
Okay.
they pay taxes on it. I did read it, obviously. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
and that's, I don't like giving sick time because of that. I agree with the vacation, but if they're willing to assume the tax burden for it, I think there is going to be a need, and they have, they're not going to take it just to take it. They're going to take it if they need it. And I think in that case, if someone's willing to sacrifice the time, that the town should stand behind the workers and help them as far as we can. Even if it does mean on occasion we're going to incur a small financial burden for it. I think to take care of our own, so to speak, it's a good idea.
It also prevents too from people dumping time into it. So if somebody decides they're going to leave and just go, well, I'll give you all the hours that I have left because I'm not going to use it. Doesn't
Right.
let that occur. and then also
Right,
limits
but
it
the
to-
problem is, you only know it if they officially tell you I'm gonna leave. But if they do this and then 2 weeks later they say I'm gonna leave,
Well, we have an existing limit on
there's
sick
nothing here
bank
saying you
counts,
gotta
don't we?
stay with us for a minimum of 6 months if you donate this, or, I'm just curious, is that potentially if they know ahead of time, they know they should not be telling you they're leaving.
Right.
Even if it's
It's
in
hard
the
to-
best interest of, I just need to help my friend.
We have a cap on rollover vacation hours, don't we have also a cap on rollover sick hours?
Yes.
So we're buffered anyways to the cap. Most people are gonna hit the cap and lose it and not care. But there's a cap on hours too, so there's a limit to how far that burning could go if that happened. And if someone accepts those hours, the sick hours of somebody, there's no debt to them for it. And if they stay so many years, they get paid for those. Once they transfer to this other person, now there's a tax debt for those hours. So it's not just a free pass, it's gonna change your tax bracket, it's gonna change their overall income tax by earning more money. So this.
It's, in a way, it's not gonna affect the recipient much, because what they're saying is, you're gonna get paid for time you can't work.
Right.
Because we weren't paying you anyway, because you would run out of your paid time off.
Right,
And that, if I'm reading number 9 here, it's only 30 days max.
Right.
So you're not covering somebody's complete 6-month short term by giving everybody else in the department sick time to him.
Right.
Which is part of something I'm glad to see, because I agree with that. Every year you would find someone can come up with a reason why they're sick for 60 days at a time. And only
gets
because of
beyond-
the Family Medical Leave Act. It's very likely you're always gonna have someone that, I got a kid that's really sick, or we just had it in the police department. And at the same time, I'm guessing, and I don't know what spawned this, we have somebody right now at DPW that's been out well over a year. It may or may not be that person, but we've had 2 experiences where this would have applied in the last year already.
What this doesn't cover is somebody who goes out on workman's comp. So if you're receiving any sort of other compensation for your time left, then you can't, that it's not a sick donation. Or if you're receiving.
It doesn't say that if they've already used up all of their paid time off. So if they've used up all their paid time off, it doesn't mean they're not covered by workers' comp, does it? I don't see it
you're
anywhere
not gonna
here.
get coverage by workers' comp if you're out on a sick leave. I don't believe, I think workers' comp's only gonna kick in when you are out and displaced, I think. I don't think they'll double pay you.
I'm just saying that it depends on the situation of when the workers' comp claim occurred and how much they've already used of their accrued. They technically, just because they're on workers' comp, this doesn't say,
Let's attack it a different way, Matt.
you would have to say that some other,
Let's attack it a different way.
you know what I mean, just think it through, that's all.
I think
Because I
the-
hear what you're saying,
I
but
think the intent's good and the structure's good, and it's a living document, we can adjust it if we need to in the future. So I'd feel comfortable letting this go, and if one of those problems then arises, then we fix it. I don't wanna try to pre-plan the heck out of this and cover everything and dot every I and cross every T right now and make it ironclad. I'd like to get this moving forward because there's a need, that's why it was proposed. And if we see or are worried about abuse in the future, we can tweak it. Because we
No.
absolutely have that right.
the only other thing I just want to double check here, and you may have put it in there, is does the recipient have to be a full-time person that would have already accrued said time off?
Yes. I believe that is in there. Might be in the purpose. Sorry. Forgot to put my own copy in there.
I see the part that says full-time employees eligible to donate, but it doesn't identify them being also the only ones eligible to receive. Otherwise, every part-timer could ask their buddy to give them some sick time if they're sick next Thursday.
Part-timers don't get sick pay, right?
Right, unless somebody uses this and their full-timer says, I'm not gonna use that sick time, and they give them the sick time.
So these, why we, left the blank area there of the named, so that way, before it's adopted, you guys actually have to adopt the policy for the addition, for that specific person. So that, to avoid that abuse.
Exclude part-timers.
If you're making under or if you're working under 20 hours a week, you're not getting access to sick time.
You're not earning
You're
sick
not
time.
earning sick time.
But this allows somebody to give it to them.
Why don't we just say to assist another full-time employee?
Right.
Just add full-time,
That's all, just because
just right there.
it is a way to try to manipulate the personnel policy if we don't make sure that,
Just under purpose.
or even just
Full-time
something
employee.
random, if
You can
you're
take
allowed
that
to
right
accrue
there.
sick and vacation
I get
via
that
your
digitally anyway, so.
contract or
So you come to that.
classification, then
We'll
you
add-
can receive it according to
We'll add
this.
full-time right there and let it go for now and adjust it if we have to.
That's all.
So I'll make a motion, we accept this with
Oh, it's
the
right here.
addition.
All full-time employees of the DPW, both union and non-union, who have completed the probationary period will be considered eligible to donate vacation.
To
receipt.
donate.
To donate,
donate.
not receive.
To donate
You
or
could- Well,
receive.
they could just do donate or receive and do it there, right?
Yeah. And now the next question is, do you want to underline Department of Public Works? Because is it only for DPW, or is this gonna be for all non-union represented personnel?
I would say just DPW for right now.
Why do you have an issue with this
I do
administration
that.
wing?
I do that as a future policy, because we want to attack this one
This
time.
is a policy or a one-time thing?
This is a one-time thing.
I thought we
So
just-
it's a one-time template for,
I just thought we said it was gonna be a policy.
so that's why I'm saying just,
The thought of this is that right now we're doing this as a one-time thing for when one person comes up. We know the person that kind of started this discussion is from the DPW, so it's set in DPW. Something else comes up, we can look at the eligibility and talk about it, but the thought is that once, if there's anything that changes, there might be a possibility of making this a town-wide policy at some
Okay,
point.
so why don't we do
well,
this?
no,
at
the
one
only
time?
reason I'm bringing it up here is because you identified Department of Public Works, it also means that Sandy couldn't donate 1 hour to the same person. So now it's all on the DPW to come up with the 30 days work if necessary, if that's what they need. Where this opens it up to every department if they want, everybody can put in 1 hour. Nobody feels overburdened, but all of a sudden you can cover the 4 days this person might need, or whatever the
So
situation.
you wanna broaden it now?
So I'm just asking if that would be, how important is it that, so you may just wanna double check with the lawyer to see if that made a difference or not.
The interdepartmental changing of the sick, is that gonna affect us on the accounting side?
That comes out of the treasurers, right?
Do you see what I'm
Paid
saying?
time off, sick time isn't.
Because now we're taking
budgeted.
money from DPW.
Right.
Right now, it stays within DPW, but if we take money from the selectmen budget in the town hall, and now it goes towards the DPW worker, we've just transferred money into coffers. That might be why, I don't
Yeah,
know.
we'd have to figure out where the paid time off comes off, but I think that falls into the treasurer's. The only thing would be the water and sewer. But they still, I think, are under a treasurer line, but they just, at town meeting, provide a certain amount that they're paying to the treasurer to cover those.
You could put
Costs.
the donations
Into a bank
into a separate account.
to be used for.
Donated sick pay account.
But we need to establish that account, which would be a town
What
meeting.
they're saying is this
Out of
isn't
that
decided at town meeting. So 3 months later, all of a sudden, someone gets unexpectedly sick, they don't have the sick time,
Yeah.
and their
Right.
colleagues want to help. How do they do that? Because now there's no way to set up the account.
Right. But let's set the
You need
town
to
up,
set an account
let's
up.
set this account at town meeting, we'll
I just-
approve
I
the
think
account.
The account already exists separately for all departments on paid time off. I don't think it comes from yours. Like, if you got paid time off for fire, it's not in fire's budget for your vacation and sick.
I think it
There
is.
it is.
No,
I think-
52 weeks a year for a full-time employee is in the budget. whether it's paid time off or straight worked time,
That's how
that's
it's
it.
budgeted.
It's just the 52 weeks.
But your sick pay is coming out of that 52 weeks.
It's-
Only if I use it, but if I work every day, it's not. And if I'm at an age where I want to roll vacation and I choose not to take vacation that week, that year, it's not. So all I'm
Yeah,
saying
that's
is,
interesting.
we're just budgeting the 52 weeks a year that they're working.
Right.
And that's in the department's budget.
You're just talking about the
The
moving around.
treasurer
accruals.
deals with any of these, is it sick time or straight time or whatever.
Yeah, but-
So I don't think
It's moving around.
pulling hours from here to here is the same, because what you're still saying is that person who's gonna be out sick, the maximum sick days you're gonna be able to pay is the 30 days through this program, is still the same 30 days that were already budgeted for that person to do the job.
But my,
You
Am I right?
check
Am I-
with the
okay.
treasurer,
no,
the accountant.
the,
But
most.
yeah, it wouldn't hurt to just double check.
Most departments, except for our police department and our full-time fire personnel, if somebody calls out sick, if Sandy calls out sick, that's part of the budget money. We're giving her the same pay, it's just getting put down as sick pay.
Yeah,
We're not bringing a replacement in for the day, so we don't need an extra set of money. So although, yes, it's a sick bank, we're just agreeing to pay them the money we budgeted for their pay, which is in that budget. It's just being called sick pay, but it's the same kettle of money.
But we don't call anybody else either.
But the same, right, and the same thing with the DPW. That person's there for their 52 weeks. If they're out sick, it's that 52-week pay that's still paying them. But if we take that sick money and we're gonna pay that person for the 52 weeks and pay 30 days of sick, that's a new pool of money that we have to create. So-
Right, but we're not paying that person, because they're not getting the 30 days of pay out of the original
So,
52. Because
really-
we're not putting
No, they are.
another person on the books to replace the
But they're
30
still,
days.
they're still collecting the 52 weeks of
But
pay.
the only.
We're just not calling it something
Yeah, the
different.
only agreement that affects is the police union, because they're the only one that would take somebody off and call somebody in. If somebody wasn't able to fund, you're both funding the person who
Yeah,
is
if
not
somebody's
working
sick, you
and the
still
person
have
who
to
is.
cover the shift, so all of a sudden your budget
So
goes up.
that's the only one that you're really running into that issue with, so
So
maybe
my thought is-
So
redrafting
all
it. accepting
full-time
the-
employees that are not under the police union contract. That's the
That could
perfect
probably be the
template,
best.
because one, they do have something in there, if they want it, they can use it.
Yeah.
I do understand that at times it may, the fire department EMS might grow into the same thing,
Right.
depending on the full-timers there, and then, well, I gotta pull someone in, he's out sick a month, he's my full-time EMS guy, Monday through Friday, and
And I assume they have sick hours. I
that
don't
would
even
be
know if they're running
another
sick
line we
hours,
gotta
if they
be
just pull
careful
in
of, where all of a
shifts.
sudden the
'Cause they're per
budget
diem
does
shifts.
blow.
If they're per diem shifts, they're not getting sick hours,
Right. Not
Correct.
the per diems. Not the per diems.
So they may not be getting, a lot of those shifts are per diem, so they're not getting sick hours anyways. They're just taking a shift, picking up a shift when they can. But if we did
So the
have-
language might have to be specific to those that can accrue paid time off, can receive paid time off.
And,
specific.
and I still think it's safer if we had a fund we set up, an account,
Mhm.
that these donations go into that account and then are paid out of that account. That would allow us to use it interdepartmental a lot easier. So I'd say we do this like it is, kick the tires for a few months and before town meeting, decide if we want to set a fund for it in,
Do we adjust the wording on Department of Public Works?
say again?
Do we adjust the wording from just Department of Public Works before moving forward with it?
Yep.
Okay.
Want to go ahead and do it now?
It might be, that's where you write in the non-police union.
Yeah.
Just change it to that.
All municipal employees, all full-time municipal employees other than police union personnel.
And then define who can receive it separately. So that's the donators, the receivers are the ones that actually have the ability to accrue under the current
Work.
contract or classification slot that they have with the town. You know, however you define the position they have with the
Right.
town.
All right. Yeah, fire backfills, the full-timers, what they call out sick, so that is another one of those.
Right,
You're paying
so-
2 for 1.
So that's where we gotta figure out,
Define it.
like Claire was saying, the accountant, the treasurer is,
Yeah.
if we wanna have that option, how do we do it? I don't know. It may be that you have to donate what you've already accrued, not what you might accrue that year.
If I'm,
I don't know.
if I'm getting paid for full-time job, they've set the budget to pay me $52,000, $1,000 a week. And I get 3 weeks vacation, 3 weeks of sick time. It doesn't change the $52,000. It's just, I don't work 6 of those weeks. So if I can take my 3 weeks of sick and put that in the coffers, I'm still getting paid my $52,000, and now we have another $3,000 that has to come from somewhere. That's why I'm saying we need to set an account aside that we can
But the
put
thing
money in.
is,
And
I
we
don't
have
wanna
to-
set up a account aside.
It has to
I
come
don't
from-
wanna pay more.
It has to come.
So
from-
if you
we're
can
gonna
do
pay
it
more.
within the
Right, it needs to be
structure that
broken.
doesn't allow it to bloat budgets unexpectedly in the middle of a fiscal year.
But my point is, that's why we're
That's the
gonna
only
pay
way it's
more.
gonna-
We're taking someone who is working and then giving that sick time to someone who is not working, that's depleted their hours. Now, it may be that that person had time allowed for them to earn. In other words, they also had $52,000 they could earn. But now, because of the circumstances, it's 12 they can earn.
Yeah.
So I guess technically it would still be in their books allowed for, which
Right,
someone else
that's
is just
the-
giving their
it's-
time. So I guess,
It really applies,
yeah. Since that money's already been allocated to that department for that employee, we're just finding a way to continue paying them.
it's almost like we can do that if it means that while that person's out, we're not replacing them with another person.
Yeah.
So we're not
Right.
doubling up the impact of the budget for
Right,
that
so
role.
the
And if you
only,
can figure out how to word that, I think it kind of matches all of our intent at
the only
moment.
exception, yeah, the only exception is gonna be when someone goes out, they have to be replaced, they're gone for 3 months and they get replaced, and then we start to pay someone else. That's the only time it will double dip and affect us.
And at that point, that creates a Board of Selectmen approval because it means you're creating a new position. Or you actually have to fire the other person, you're not double dipping anymore because they are no longer on the, and you replace them with a new person.
Right.
So, you're
Except-
right, it would be
except
before
for
the
the-
board either way, because they can't just hire someone to cover someone that's gone without approving us, because they don't have the number.
Right, so as long
on the org chart.
you know, yeah, we just be careful that if it's, you know, it's not doubling up, that's all. And if it is, we just have to approve it, because there's gotta be someplace that money comes from.
Agreed. All right, the next two items.
So we're gonna approve this for today?
No,
Nope.
he's gotta revise
Wait
it.
and do it, because I think they're looking for that time.
We'll revise it, if
We'll
you think
revise
you
it.
can have it revised, we can throw it on next Monday's, and we'll do a pre-post DPW commission type select board meeting, and
Sure.
if that works.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Because I think we're close, we just
Yeah,
gotta
I just
get a
don't wanna-
couple things
yep,
figured out.
I just don't wanna
before we-
delay it, and I don't wanna premature, but I don't wanna delay it either.
Understood.
Snow and ice.
Yes, snow and ice. What numbers are they recommending, and did they give a buffer for
Right now, we're at,
the potential of a March, April thing?
next page 2 has where
So
they're
the
at.
salaries are under by 914 and the
So we're at 36, I believe.
31,995, plus we have salaries though as well.
No, that's the total, it's one line, it's just, that's the combination of 914 plus the next two. Is this number though.
So it's all,
Oh, it's-
That's the
it's
total,
Okay.
the
These
31,000.
two, yeah,
Okay.
31,000 to date,
Yep.
that's the overrun.
But I think where we're at in the year, I would say if you did the authorization
31,955.
to 50,000, you'd be safe.
Yeah, we
I'd
still
rather
could.
give them no more than 37,000, because if they have to spend more than that for one more event,
Plus, I'm just thinking stocking up for next year.
why would they be doing that now? Do they always do that?
Get a healthy bank of salt and sand for the next,
Well, that's
for the
not,
next year.
that's not a healthy bank, that's a drop in the bucket for salt.
I'm just thinking, the extra, if you just authorize it to 50, gives them that opportunity to repair any broken equipment. I mean, we had a pretty light, even though we're at a negative, it's a pretty light snow and ice year.
Oh, yeah, this was not like last year. Last year was ice after ice after ice.
Right.
What are we now? We're entering April. We certainly had snowstorms in April. We could certainly have an ice event.
Andrew, how much are they over now?
31.
Yeah, but it's not
30,
more than
almost 32. Not bad.
That's not bad.
No, it's not
As I
bad
said,
at all.
if they just gave it the bucket
Um,
of 50, it kind of gives them that.
Well, if we put extra in, and he doesn't spend it, it's just gonna go back to free cash
Right.
next year anyway, so it's not like it's gonna hurt us
Yeah,
to
we're
get a
not
little
moving
extra
money
and not
around.
have to address it again. And if he puts salt or something in the shed, then good. And if not, we'll have it back in free cash. We're talking about a small
Doesn't
amount.
even go into free cash. None of this is free cash or actually,
It's money that we pull from free cash at the end of the fiscal.
this is us just pretty much telling them, try not to go over this number. Because it's the one thing they're allowed to run into deficit. So this is the total value that's going to go on to this next year's budget as pay for last year's snow overtime deficit.
But we'll take it out of
So
free cash.
any number we increase this to, every dollar that they spend of that is money that's not going towards next year's budget. It's one of the warrant articles saying pay for last year's overrun. And it eats up the budget going into next year. So every dollar we spend now is money we're not spending next year. And that's why I'm being a little tight now, saying it's April. You got one snowstorm event left. You should be
Yeah.
able to handle that in $6,000 to $7,000.
We've had
Well,
some-
if
we've
not,
had
they come
some-
back and they ask again and we
Right.
bump it. But
There's no harm to
there's
bump it
no
again.
snowstorm predicted in the next 2 weeks, from what I see.
I would hope we're done.
That should require $7,000 worth of money to handle.
But if there is one, if we take this at this level, then the one brings them back automatically. As opposed to assuming we may have. it's
Oh,
still
what I'm
dropping down to
saying
20s
is,
at night,
you
them a
give
little
them the
bit.
31
And maybe
plus 7, so you give them
okay.
38,000, so that you dig them out of the hole they're in, and you say you got
To
7,000 more in case another event comes between now and then. Unless you know of a specific equipment repair they need to do this week that
Well,
is
that's what I'm
related to
wondering.
this
I mean, I'm just
cost.
thinking like, you know, if they wanna repair a plow, you know, that could be
I'm
$5,000.
assuming the salt shed isn't
But they
empty,
haven't
so it's
asked
not,
for
it's
that.
not like we're gonna give them 30,000, buying 30,000 of salt. This is where the budget's at. I would assume we have some sand and salt down there, and we could handle an event. And, we could guess it, we could wait till next week DPW and talk about it then and see where they're at instead of speculate on it. I mean, this is just where he's at. Maybe he's full of salt, maybe he's empty on salt.
But I would rather make something so it doesn't sit as a negative, so I'd still rather give them something. If we have to revisit it next week, we just give them a little more. But this way,
Sure, throw a number out.
because it's not that hard to put it on our agenda.
What do you want, 38?
So 38, or if you want to round it
That's a
off and
six
just
buffer.
give them an even 40,
Sure.
I'd do.
you know,
Just make
and
it
that,
40, make the math easier.
yeah. So that erases the near 32,000 and gives them 8,000 more to work with for the next month. Let's hope we don't have like a May 28 blizzard like we did a couple years ago. But I've been so wrong this year. I predicted it to be a nasty snowstorm because all my leading indicators I'm used to seeing was, oh, it's gonna be bad because it didn't snow till after Halloween, and it was like, when it comes late, it stays forever.
Now,
I
is
was
this-
wrong.
We're recommending this, and finance still has to approve this, so we. or
Finance
this is-
has to approve it on
Still has to
Thursday.
approve it, so we're
Yep.
just gonna, what are we, authorizing or recommending? How do we
Make a
phrase that?
motion to authorize deficit spending of a total of 40,000 on the snow removal account total. So I'm not breaking it out between overtime and materials or whatever. I'm just saying, take that line and go 40,000.
Pending approval of the finance committee, right?
Yeah.
I'll second that.
I'm in favor.
Call for vote. Second. He's in favor.
Aye, yep.
Aye. Okay. Unanimous.
Good.
All right. Ratification of contract with the fire chief.
Do you want to?
This is an executive session, so you can at least listen, Charlie, and, I mean, Greg.
Sure.
Pretty much, we didn't change anything about anything except his pay year to year to year. We didn't get into benefits and changing this or tweaking that, or, I think the only thing we talked about was the compensation. Initially, during our negotiation, we had agreed on a 3-3-3, 3%, 3%, 3%, because we believe the fire chief needed to kind of catch up with some other higher level administrators in the town. Fire chief, deputy I mean, police chief, deputy police chief,
Do we
town
have-
administrator.
Don't we have a deputy chief any more than our fire chief?
That's why we went from 333, we said, let's look at it again, instead we said 522, so we could give him a bigger bump the first year and then carry it through the 3 years, rather than get him there slower at the end. I do believe this puts him up higher than the deputy chief right now. Still puts him below the police chief and
Does he
right
stay-
around you.
Does he stay above
Still-
the deputy chief?
He's above you now?
Yeah. At
Does he-
Okay, I
Does
forgot.
he stay above the deputy chief, or does the
Yeah.
2-2 let him fall back behind?
No, because the deputy's is 222.
Yeah. So, in general, we kind of saw that, so we're trying to put him back where he belongs within the way we've been trying to, in a way, just help out the people that work for the town, because we've done our best, we know it, and we're not trying to just blow the budget, honestly, Claire, but we also know a lot of the people that work for the town deserve more. We know that it's hard to work with the budget, and I know that, but you can't deny it. Anybody working for this town is pretty much almost volunteering despite they get a full-time pay. They're not getting paid very well for what they do for the town. If we can find a way with additional revenues and cost efficiency and other things we've been doing, I would like to see a bigger picture trying to bring that pay up so that someone working for our town doesn't feel like they also have to work 2 other jobs. And we do have some full-timers that are that close because they're 11, 12, 14, $15 an hour people that have families. You know that. I mean, we all know, have family members that's what they're living. And I want to see if we can make it so that we're not the reason they're living that way. But we've still got to do it a lot more work on our side. We're trying to get more revenues and things so that we can actually justify it, not just make up numbers and run us into the ground.
Right. Well, he's done, having the ambulance dumped on him, which I think he picked up surprisingly seamlessly. I'm surprised how well he picked that up.
How much again? I'm just trying to remember. How much were we paying Joe? Almost 80,000? When we let him go and then brought in Bob?
He was saying if the 2% increases continue to the point where we're at, he'd be at 80. So I don't know if it was straight if he was at 80.
Well, Joe would have been at 80 by now,
Right.
based on where he started.
Right.
Okay, so,
He's taken on more tasks, more full-time personnel.
we've asked more of that position.
You guys did a good job for the town. I'm surprised you got him there. I would have put
I'll tell you this,
he does a lot, but it's good to see he's gonna get above the deputy.
all I can say is, we are very lucky and privileged to have some of the people that work for this town. Because based on their skill set, their knowledge, and their ability,
His certification.
they easily could go make a lot more money for a lot less work in other places. So when it comes to our town administrator, our police chief, our fire chief, we are in a situation right now where some of it is where they're at in their career path, but some of it also is they like where they're working. And we
Todd
need to
just said.
recognize that and be appreciative of that. We can't abuse that, is what I'm trying to say, or they'll leave.
There's something to be said. It's like, look how happy
Okay,
Todd
I'll
is.
make a
that he's
motion
working
that
with
we
the town.
approve the contract as published.
I second that motion and call for a vote, knowing that you're not gonna be involved with your.
Keep my 2
Aye.
bits further out of it.
I'm in favor.
Aye. Just need 2 hard copies or 1, guys.
Yeah, might as well make it 2.
Thank you.
Seems like a long meeting. It's not even 10. We used to cruise to 11. This is. really not unreasonable.
All right, what is the, we got two other things on the agenda. I think two, if I did it right. One other thing on the agenda, and that is an executive session for all of us to tell Andrew how poorly he's, we have an executive session with respect, strategy and respect to the town administrator. So this would be the last item on the agenda for the evening. So Charlie, you have one last moment to tell the town what you want on the camera.
Thank you.
That's it. Good enough.
You're not gonna hear the selectman report prior to that, if he has one?
I don't have.
Okay.
I'm sorry, do you have a selectman report? You're right, I
I
didn't
mean,
mean
not
to-
selectman, I mean, I
Town administrator.
meant the administrator report, not selectman.
Okay,
I just making sure he didn't have something to get out before.
good point.
Sorry, not me.
So,
Unless Charlie has something.
we will be going to executive session per MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Exemption 2, to discuss strategy with respect to town administrator. So I would make a motion to do that.
Second the motion.
I'm in favor.
For all of those interested, when we are done, we will leave executive session, go into open session, and not do any further business, and then close the meeting from there on. So, call for a vote.
O'Sullivan, yes.
Matt Urban, yes. Yes. All right.